Hey, real quick, is the audio better?
Yeah, the audio is better.
Okay.
We will explain that,
All right, I posted on Twitter too. So, anyways, sorry, I got distracted by a take by Nightmare Vision about Spengler, and I didn't know Spengler liked the Impressionists that much. Man, I it's been a while since I read Decline of the West, and I read it when I wasn't like fully aware. And listen, guys, if I see you doing towers in the chat, I'm gonna ban people. Don't, please, God. Anyways, this is the Digital Archipelago. Finally, after a week hiatus, Prude, you were on Holy Easter, Orthodox Easter week, and what's the word that you call it?
Pascha.
Pascha. Sorry, how did I miss that? Call it Pasquale. But yeah, so that's why we had to miss. And I know you got. Listen, I don't want to bring this. I don't want to be a grifter. Okay, I don't want to be a grifter. But I mean, you give deep and give generously. You guys are pretty generous to Prude last time we were on. Listen, Cyber Ninja Zero, how dare you? Please, you should be my friend here, my greatest frenemy. So, well, I have other frenemies, but Cyber Ninja Zero is one of the dedicated GeoCell A-logs. But I like having a few A-logs around just to keep us on our toes. But anyways, this is the Digital Archipelago, episode 39. I can't believe almost at 40. And we have a good friend on today, our great friend Christopher Sandbatch, who hopefully will illuminate the topics we're going to discuss and will not get us into OPSEC trouble. But I don't know. That's another thing for another time. How are you, my friend? How are you, Christopher? He's in a coffee shop apparently, but he's probably ordering an espresso.
And out.
And he's out.
Oh well.
He'll come back.
He'll be back in a minute. That tends to be the case. But yeah,
right.
It's been a fun week off, although I have not been off in the slightest. I had 2 sort of videos come out last week, and I'll have one out hopefully this weekend as well. There's an Odyssey exclusive that you can go tune into with Dimes over from Blood Satellite if you're in for something interesting. And then a new fishing video is out. But Mr. Sandbatch is back. Are we here to stay this time?
Yeah, probably. You can hear me.
Nice.
We can now. Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, there we go. I was like, I was messing around with the settings because I don't have a StreamYard account, and every time one of y'all sends me a link to it, I start messing with the settings, just because I'm like a real twitchy person. I'm like, ooh, what does this button do? And then I like mute myself.
You do have a twitch to you. You have a sort of a spurgoid jumpiness. It's pretty good though.
Right, yeah. I'm super happy to be here though on the most important day in the right wing calendar, which is Grateful Dead Day. That's why I got my old avatar out.
Yeah, that's true. April 20th is the day where a few men stood against time. The end of Waco. Columbine. No, you know what? I'm not going to do the bit. Please, just keep some. In case someone caps me saying positive things.
You've already tweeted it out, Gio. It's perfectly fine.
I deleted one of the tweets. I gotta delete. Every year I tweet that out and I delete it because I'm like, oh man, what if, what if some tracker account, But I didn't tweet. I didn't tweet the visage of one particular Austrian painter, but one of his paintings instead. But maybe, I don't know, that'll probably trip certain people. So I'm going to delete the tweet, but I'm getting distracted by Renew Fault, getting ready for Fat B-Word Friday. So
is this another tradition that comes out of that Steven Pinker tweet from like 2013 where he's in a diner and he's asking about the homeless person with a sign that says he needs a fat bitch?
That's true.
It's probably my favorite tweet from. No, it was Richard Dawkins who tweeted that, and that's probably
Richard Dawkins.
It's probably the smartest thing Richard Dawkins has ever said.
Yeah, it is. Well, apart from his stuff in Selfish Gene, but I mean, when I
You know, I've never heard his voice. I've never heard his voice. Never read a thing that he's written. I feel like I can do this because you could probably attest to this. That once you get on a certain level of theory selling, you can just
Yeah.
kind of put your hand on the book and tell what's inside it. You know,
That's
and
true.
he's one of those guys.
Well, the God Delusion was really big back in the day. It was like that was like the end. But then when you look like back to it, it really wasn't like nothing like at all that is really, you know, worthy of note. Like because there was one person that compared the two. They said that with Christopher Hitchens, it could only be written by Christopher Hitchens, but with Dawkins, like any old dork theory cell could probably write the book. So
And look
Yeah.
at you know, his legacy is kind of great in this instance because what comes out of the God Delusion is two pathways. You get an intersectional screeching feminist, or you get a hardcore race realist.
you get Rebecca Watson, or you get I don't know, you'll get HBDNRX on Twitter.
Basically.
Yeah, you're Richard Hanania, but oh god, probably not. Probably not.
I actually liked, I don't know who tweeted it out, but someone had done like the redified, deep fried picture of his visage, just like image on Twitter. And he's just like, I broke into your house. He's like, I'm here to save you from those theocrat Republicans. Your grandmother looked old, so I euthanized her. The New York Times is the best thing ever. And I just thought to myself, someone should really make a Nextbot like that they use for Gmod and other Half-Life bits where you're just getting, you know, chased by a PNG. And it would just be clips of Richard Hanania saying just inane shit in podcasts, and like it would say that every time it kills you, and it's like, actually the New York Times is really credible, and then it's like you know, like every time that you die in a Half-Life 2 source engine game, and it'll just be perfect.
I need to paint Dark Hanania.
I need a Hanania Nextbot, and I will play the Hanania Nextbot game. Because I was fucking around with StreamYards yesterday because I have rural internet, and I was like, oh, I've teased that I occasionally want to like do a video game playthrough or something. And so I tested it out like last night at 11 o'clock. We played a little bit of Cursed Halo for an hour, the Inferno Plus mod, and it was a lot of fun. So yeah, I was glad that all worked out. I might do more of that in the future, but yeah, I will play a Dark Hanania Nextbot with him chasing me down with his interviews with Vivek Ramaswamy and all that sort of jazz.
Is he a Vivek guy?
He interviewed him. He's made the case on his Substack about why he should be president of the United States. It's terrifying.
Did you see the clip where Vivek was saying that, and the Taiwanese, like Americans, should defend their homeland with Bushmasters? It's like that good old humble American Second Amendment as apple pie, but only now the Taiwanese and the blue yellow people.
Yeah, behind every behind every like I guess wet market, there's going to be a Bushmaster waiting for the PLA.
Behind every blade of lemongrass is going to be a Bushmaster. But yeah, so final word of shilling before we get into it. Yesterday, I had the 4th chapter of Art After Metaphysics, where I get into Baczynski. Hopefully that takes off. Hopefully, like, as I know, like the as I bashed them in an episode, the YouTube video essayists, they really love Baczynski because he's like, the Reddit. He's becoming Redditified. But other than that, I have yesterday there was some technical difficulties, but I will definitely post it after the stream. I'll give you the link afterwards. I was on the War Report again, and we went like over 3 hours talking about different news items, but more than that, just like the general picture of how the special military operations going. We talked about the Jack, what's his name, the leaker, the Pentagon kid, and then
Thug Shaker Central.
Yeah.
What a great GC name, by the way.
Yeah, I know.
Like,
and we also
press F to that kid, but I mean,
press F for him. It's over for him. But maybe we could talk a little bit about it here. But we also went into Yevgeny Boghossian's letter, which was quite illuminating. I think with the letter, he probably has political aspirations. But anyways, hopefully we get Sandbatch back.
He said he'll be right back.
Before he gets back, before we cover the article, do you want to talk? Listen, everyone. Like, the reason the numbers are pretty low now, I could probably guess, because I probably guess that you people are probably watching Fish Tank on another tab right now. Okay, so let's get it over with. Let's talk about Fish Tank and Sam Hyde. Every streamer has been flipping their lid because it's all people want to watch is the Fish Tank. So,
I haven't watched any of it except for what people post on Twitter. The idea of surviving what is it, a month, 30 days in a house, no phone,
6 weeks.
6 weeks. Okay, so a little more than that. So basically, what, 40 days, right?
Yeah.
A little more than that. But yeah, so what a great concept. You've reinvented Big Brother, but now I can Twitch stream and donate, and TTS is going to tell me to do ridiculous shit. And I saw the clip for Meet the Contestants because I saw the YouTube channel for it. What an odd bunch of Zoomers that just
I know.
I don't know. This is like a masterpiece of experimental work, I guess.
Yeah, but they're going to be immortalized because then the Hyde heads are going, like, old heads are going to, like, dox everything about them. Like, they already found Sylvia's OnlyFans. By the way, shout out to all Sylvia cells. Everyone loves Josie. They found her TikTok doing, like, anime, even though she doesn't watch anime. She just does the artwork. They're going to, like, know everything about these people. And I said to Schwab last night on Twitter Space, it's like, I think people don't realize that Sam Hyde, there is a lot of millennial, like older millennial MTV type of culture. Like, it's a more high-ended take. It's a more high IQ version of, like, the MTV trash culture, in that now you have a reality show, but that now it's, like, actually 24/7. It's not like Big Brother. It's not like the real life. It's, like, actual 24/7 with super chats enabled. And there have been, like, Twitch streamers, and there have been, like, IP2 streamers that have done this, where they're, like, living for a period of time where the chat basically runs their life. I believe Ice Poseidon did this. And, Schwab had a great point from my point about how Sam Hyde is, like, the perfect, like, hyper-real artist, in a sense that he's collected all of these, like, little nomads around him that do his work, like people like Jet Neptune. And they all have their own, like, arc, and they all have their own, like, input, and they more or less, I think, come up from the same culture that we've come up in. And I think that's why $1 Million Extreme, that's why World Peace was such a brutal loss to us, because it was the time where we could make it, and it was a time where the sort of the antipods of the online world can be exposed to a greater audience. But now that Sam Hyde is, like, doing this guerrilla media production stuff, it really is sort of becoming a phenomenon that the mainstream is, like, forced to pay attention to. Like, people, like, are looking at this, like, Fish Tank. Yeah, Gio should be on season 2. Can you imagine if I was on season 2 of Fish Tank? My God. Like, people are creating these idols in real time of these people, but I would say in a different way than what people have done with, like, reality TV stars. I mean, maybe it'd be the similar, but it's like a different take on, like, all of the reality TV stars that people have grown accustomed to over the years. It's like reality TV is dead because the networks are dying and nobody cares. And it's not like I could remember back in, like, the early 2000s where everyone was, like, watching Jersey Shore or whatever, like the mid 2000s. It's like nobody cares anymore. Now we have, like, these internet dwellers where it's like Josie is people's, it's Josie is a waifu. John is, like, the autist that you are. And it's like a layer of authenticity, or rather, Sam Hyde, the reason he's brilliant is because he gives you the illusion to authenticity. Whereas we all know that, like, big network productions are mostly fake. Yeah, see, look, even Gloff right here. Never ever begin for Josie Cells, Letty Chads, never. See, like, look. It's right in their chat. It's right in their chat. Fish Tank Archipelago. Do you boys have any theory cell takes on it?
Is this not a greater sign of the fact that it's 24/7, cameras are constantly running, chat can interact at any time?
Yeah, exactly. It's streaming culture brought to real life,
I like you just said, it's in the chat. So maybe my brain is just thinking.
Sorry about that, by the way. I just did that shit again. I was like, I'm gonna hit F5 for no reason.
You're really embracing the 30-year-old boomer inside of you there, Sandbatch.
So bad. I'm not even I'm perfectly fine with all technology until I get like on the air with people, and then I'm like, let's change everything.
Good Lord.
Yeah, a fish tank would be. I would love to live with a bunch of friends for a few days in a house, but then I guess it would be too. Anyways, do you guys have theory cell takes on fish tank?
I'll just try and get my point across rather quickly. I think it's a way to make reality TV less fake. It's more accessible. Interactions are in real time, but it's also a great way to look at people that are under constant observation at all times. I mean, we already are with our phones, our smart TVs and things like that. But, now we get to interact with it. And I don't know, it feels like a great way to dehumanize people while at the same time, like, get your entertainment rocks off. Like, we're gonna take, and again, right, this is a two-way street, because I mean, these people, I guess, signed up for it, or were chosen, or were in his orbit, or wanted to do this. I don't know how long this project's been going on, or how much planning and effort
I don't think they know a lot about Sam Hyde and like the lore, from what I can tell, from what I've watched.
That's probably for the best, because I'd imagine that if you're on your phone and looking up who Sam Hyde is and trying to they're like, oh shit, right? Like, I'm in this weird performance experimental art piece that is now going to redefine reality television, because it can be streamed constantly and people can, make that whatever amount of money he's probably put into this. I'd imagine he'll probably make his money back, or at least a substantial sum. But I think
a super chat is like $100 to send them a message.
Holy shit! Then I think he'll be fine. You can send us a message for $2 or more, but it's a crazy thing to think about, that we're going to make the Panopticon more entertaining, I guess, because now even the people under the real world surveillance state can now enjoy the microcosm of it for shits and grins.
Yeah, Josie trying to flip a bottle. See, like the most mundane stuff, like the guy, like CCP Simon doing headstands. Like it's funny. There's one take I came across, which was from what's his name? He's followed me for years. The one that runs Computer Aesthetics. He said like Sam Hyde managed to get Zoomers and like a bunch of like far right like Chan culture autists to like glom over a reality television show like it's the Daily Story, like like old biddies. They're like, I gotta listen to my stories. And it's like they watch Young and the Restless. It's like, this is our Y&R, but it's 24/7.
It's the perfect television show that's not a television show for the terminally online.
Apparently, if they raise enough money, they're going to lease Frank Castle on them. So we'll see if that pans out. But Chris, what do you think of it?
To be honest, I don't even know who Josie is. I know who Sam Hyde is, but the rest is all over my head. I'm like, what the hell?
Oh boy. So do we want to cover the article first, or do you want to talk about the leaks, or like there's been a bunch
let's do the article while Sandbatch is still with us.
All right, good.
No, it's not, I'm not going away again. I'm like, I've banished myself from touching any of the devices that are arrayed around me.
That's an accomplishment. Oh man. But yeah, so let's go with Sandbatch first. Chris, what? Oh, this is kind of... See, this is like Fish Tank right here. And we're also streaming on Twitter. And please need those super chats. I know some of you probably are banked. You're saving up the neat bucks for so you could donate a super chat to say that Sylvia has a hairy what. But anyways, if you could give kindly and give frequently to the Digital Archipelago, that would be much appreciated. But yeah, there you go. Prude changes avatar. That's crazy. That like it's funny whenever they have a super chat where like Sylvia, someone like reminds Sylvia that she has an OnlyFans, she like just ignores it. Like what else are you gonna do? Like I'm assuming that they I'm assuming that they don't have any access to their phones or social media. I think that's part of the deal. So they don't know. They're like in this total isolation, which other reality shows have done, but it's very hard to like put realism in like I think it was our good friend Kino Corner that said this is like a month-long Stanford prison experiment, but like 60,000 like terminally online 4chaners are the prison guards. So it's like yeah, exactly. No name. No, but I'm more of a Sylvia Cell. I'm more of a listen, come on. You guys know, listen. Do you even know the Gio lore with chubby women? Come on. Chubby goth women. Anyways, moving on. For Prud isn't going to say anything to that.
Wait, no. What is the Geo lore with chubby goth women? Do you fly into their DMs and coach them into physical health, and then and free them like a bird? Is that how it works?
I want to take one under my wing. I think like I've shockingly little women I've ever DM'd actually. People don't. I've never like legit DM'd. Apart from my my gal pals on Twitter, like but they're all taken. I hate to say it. It's your bro's not looking good. Oh boy. Anyways, let's move on. Let's move on from this. I could tell by Prude's silence that this is.
I'm glad Sandy took the bait for this one.
Yeah, I mean, it was just hanging up there. I had to. But he changed his avatar back to normal frog instead of like screeching into the void in Soy Jack, Wojak. I don't know. Somebody accused me in the comments. I made the mistake of looking at the comments, and Yiz is like, he's got what boomer entropy. I'm like, I'm 33 years old. I'm the same age. I'm the same age Jesus Christ was when he died, and the same age Thomas Jefferson was when he wrote the Declaration of Independence. I'm at the peak of my game right now.
What have you done with your life?
True. No, let's not go over that.
I went to grad school. That's what I did.
There you go. Look
It's
at
also
this.
Pat Casey's birthday.
Yeah, it is. Oh yeah, shout out, happy birthday to Patrick Casey. He's 30. He's like 34, I think. He's around Chris Sandbatch, dude.
I see. Yeah. I'm always curious if he's older than me by a couple of months or younger than me by a couple of months.
He doesn't look that old.
Yeah, he looks way younger than me, I think. Though I shaved my beard off, and people tell me I look 25 now, and I'm like, okay, that's fine.
Yeah, I could see that. People thought I looked older when I was younger, and I look younger when I'm older. It's really weird. Where's the one I wanted to highlight by Spasticus Autistica? Here he goes. Gifts is another chubby newer goth, though. Well, we're gonna work on that. Anyways, let's get your first impressions. What did you think of the article, Sandy? I love that nickname, Sandy.
Well, I mean, I've known Dr. Gottfried for years. I've
really?
known of him longer than I've known him. But the thing, so I kind of knew what he was going to say going into it, and he's done a number of articles like this. This is like this particular I can remember Gottfried making this critique of wokeism back before wokeism was a mainstream
thing. Yeah, even after liberalism.
We used to call it just cultural Marxism or whatever, and he's always been, and this is a real like almost why the controversy between him and James that dude that
James Lindsay
James Lindsay who has a math PhD and got famous by telling the Nashville News that he, as a white man, felt threatened by the white Christians that live around Nashville. I always like to point that out. Yeah, that was like his first sort of media debacle. So I always like to point that out when I bring up James Lindsay. That this is a guy that Maybe
he's like a famous new atheist. Like if you go to like 2006 to 2009, all of his writings are really focused on that.
Yeah, he was like an adjunct at the University of Tennessee or something. Because I think that's where his PhD's from. I think he's from University of Tennessee. And I guess the dissertation wasn't going well, and he decided he was going to get his kick somehow else. So he kicked up a minor media controversy by blaming white men. And now he's over here with us, many such cases. But, and I'm not really sure. I know he's got a whole history of wokeism that he's got, but Dr. Gottfried he's really just making his regular rounds. In a real sense, I think this only got big because somebody decided to like counter signal it, because Gottfried has written essentially this exact same article like almost as many times as I can imagine. And he's looking at this from a perspective that you would call Orthodox Marxism. Okay. So like, the only thing that Marxism is to him is economic determinism and class war. To him, anything outside of that, you have to start piling on other adjectives. There were a couple of sections that I thought were sort of interesting, and I did considerably more preparation than I normally did. But there's one thing about Dr. Gottfried that I always like to point out with people, and do you
want me to share a screen? We could.
Yeah, put the article up.
All right. There we go.
Yeah, one of y'all.
Loved ones. No, not that one. No, where is it? Come on. I can't believe this. Wait, I'll have it up. It's just that sometimes StreamYards doesn't let me do it. Anyways, you were saying?
Yeah, I said there are sometimes when Gottfried will talk and he'll give away some things about himself that are sort of fascinating, that by extension illuminate his own generation of paleocon, or right-wing thinkers. And it's here we go. Here it is. He says, unlike he's referring to Hazoni. He says he's certainly not trying to divert our attention from the necessary struggle against the woke left. He is offering what seems to be, to me, the most effective argument for assigning a Marxist derivation to woke ideology. But listen to that middle sentence there, or that first sentence. And Hazoni, he's not trying to divert our attention from the necessary struggle against the woke left. If you pull woke left out of that and insert any other word, you'll start to notice that Dr. Gottfried sounds a little bit like a Marxist. Like that is the word, like if you plug that into Chat GPT without woke left, they would probably tell you, this word sequence matches Marxist argumentation. So, I mean, you really can't, you can't assail his bona fides in the topic. And you really can't for any of these other guys that were really, because Gottfried is another one of these guys. Gottfried, guy is kind of my mentor, Don Livingston. Tom Fleming. Yeah, I don't know. Do you all know who Tom Fleming is?
I heard the name. It sounds familiar.
So Tom Fleming is the guy that he ran Chronicles before Dr. Gottfried had it.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, he was. Yeah.
He's an Episcopalian. Well, whenever I see these guys or whatever, and you all don't know me in person, but the way I dress is kind of crazy. And these guys were all at Woodstock. I don't know if Dr. Gottfried was at Woodstock, but I know the others two, they were at Woodstock. And, Eugene Genovese, the great Southern scholar, is another one of these guys who's they were members of the Communist Party earlier in life, or they were certainly certainly well within the spectrum of what we would call the new left. And then in the 1970s, they turned hard to what they called, or, to what, they referred to as the right. And they've been railing against this specific iteration of, Marxism, communism ever since then. But in a sense, there's a down with alcove A, alcove B forever aspect to a lot of their writing, especially, after they've, had a couple of brandies or something like that. They'll start to really sound like 1960s new leftists. They have the same, they have problems with the same, with the same things that the new left is known for having problems for, corporatization,
commodification, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And you start to get the sense that these guys have never really changed their mind about anything, that, they just got shoved from one Excel spreadsheet column into the other. So that's one of the things that I think is worth looking at. But I had a question for the two of you, because wokeism, to me, wokeism doesn't seem that complicated. But that might be just because, well, I mean, it is complicated, but it seems, I guess it's because I'm like on like category 5 theory cell, that that I'm aware of a lot of these connections, like the Kurt Lewin, again, Wilfred Bion, the guy that I've been on. I never hear these guys mentioned in this conversation, but when wokeism comes up to me, I'm like, oh, okay, it's these guys. But wokeism has, in the last 3 or 4 years, it's become this kind of like lightning rod issue where everybody has like lots of takes about what exactly wokeism is. And one of the things is they're nearly all bad. Like, I mean, like, I wouldn't say like, Dr. Gottfried, you have to let him off the hook here, because he doesn't ever attempt to say what wokeism actually is in this article. He only attempts to say what it's not. And so, like, I just had a question for you all. What do you all think wokeism is? I mean, try to get it in 3 sentences. See if you can.
Oh, Prude, you go first. We talked a little bit on Patrick Casey's stream with Nightmare Vision, but you go first.
Well, I think the other thing to elaborate on before I give a definition was that
thinking.
I am thinking, and that's why I'm spending my time diverting before I can give you a definition in 3 sentences or less. But no, Dr. Gottfried was on Pete Quinones shortly after the article came out, and he sort of talked about this. And his argument was that, Marx wouldn't be giving 2 shits about non-binary rights or transgender bathrooms or this intersectional framework stuff. That was his argument. He just kind of found it laughable that James Lindsay just called him an idiot, and then James Lindsay outed himself for saying that he's never read any of Gottfried's work, which I thought was a pretty damning indictment. But
yeah, I mean, that's the real controversy here. Is James Lindsay wanders into a room and has
James Lindsay.
Yeah, James Lindsay. He wanders into yet another room without an opinion. This time he leaves with a PhD.
Yeah.
So I guess I would argue to give a definition in 3 sentences or less. Right, that's what we're operating on, 3 sentences or less.
Yeah, but you could go longer. I'm just saying, just don't like turn it into a 3-year dissertation.
Oh, absolutely. I never plan to go back to school, so at least not under this current paradigm. But anyways, I guess you would define wokeism as the praxeology of intersectional and critical theory. Like, to me, that's probably the closest thing I could think of. Is this like every bit of trans rights, trans femme, like all this fake and gay shit that we all know about. Really, all of this is a praxeology of Butler and the rest of them. There's my 1 sentence definition: it is the political praxeology of critical theory.
Does Gio have his own, or is he just gonna demur?
Oh, I think
batter up, Gio.
Policy integration of anti-whiteness. I don't know. Yeah, intersectionality is probably that. I think wokeness. You have to really look at the genealogy of it in terms of like, okay, listen. First of all, before we go on, I hate this term wokeness because it's just like overplayed. It's a meme. It's like postmodernism. It doesn't like really mean anything when you like hear normies talk about it. But let's call it, I would say it's the vulgarization of certain academic theories combined with like Black Twitter lingo. That's basically all it is.
I like that one a little. Yeah. I think I might like that one a little more. I've had 10 years to sit around and think about this. And like Prude asked me, what have you done with your life? And I've got the definition of wokeness boiled down to a sentence. And it's the capitalist reification of dissent against capitalism.
There you go. Yeah, there you go. No, that's perfect. Yeah, go ahead.
But you talk about the genealogy of it, and there is some truth to the idea. How Marxism fits into the mix is really it always ends up being a very one-dimensional sort of debate whenever you bring up the question, is cultural Marxism or is, or is wokeism actually Marxism? Because in the sense, there's not a way to get this question wrong. Okay, because like what really, I mean, there's a very real sense in which you and I are all three of us are Marxists, where as soon as you can find like one iota of like sort of dialectical materialism in somebody's thought, and all of a sudden they're open to accusations of Marxism. So like you're gonna have a hard time finding like the what is that great books library, the Harvard Great Books Library? It's got Marx in it. Like Marx is in the Western canon. Like Nick Land would be like, Nick Land is like solemn providence. Marx is in there.
But also like I think like a lot of people, I think it was Jeffrey Schollenberger that said this. Like people like Zizek or whoever, they'll go back to. It's almost like they have this weird like reactionary like return ideology of like Marxism, like. We have to go back to the real roots of Marxism. But it's like that's itself is sort of like polluted in the world that we live in, because there is like I even think like Mark Fisher struck upon this before his untimely sunsetting, where you can't really like in a post Althusser world, you can't like take Orthodox Marxism and say that this exactly perfectly applies to like a world that's been inhabited by digitalization, for example. Like it's never gonna so I mean that's a very complicated question why Orthodox Marxism doesn't fit nowadays. But I mean, I cut you off, Chris, so you go ahead.
No, you're doing fine. But the thing that like where Marxism actually enters into cultural Marxism for me is it's in a very oblique way. It's not there. It's not there, but I actually think Pat Casey probably had the best take on that article that I seen. I can't remember the tweet. It was like just a real short tweet that he, and he just talked about how like really what we're talking about is ultimately like maybe liberalism, like sucking up some Marxism or something like that. And that's really the, the proper historical grounding for it. Because whenever if you really want to find the roots of wokeism, you have to go back to the same place the same place everything in the 20th century starts, which is World War I. And in World War I, the two important things that happen is that, the British Empire becomes the liberal hegemon, okay, as a result of its win. Prior to World War I, you could make a real serious argument that there are a number of competing liberalisms in the world, So like the enlightened despotism of the glorious Second Reich or whatever. This is definitely on paper. This is the Prussian regime is a liberal regime. It's a like kind of dark mirror liberalism, but it is one. And the French, I guess it's the Fourth Republic. This is certainly a distinctly French version of liberalism. So you kind of have this archipelago of liberalisms in the European 19th century. But in 1918,
Anglo-liberalism wins out.
Yeah, in 1918, Anglo-liberalism by hook, crook, or communist revolution gets rid of all of the competition, and from that point on, all liberalism is English. It's all English liberalism.
But why? But then, like when you examine the mechanisms of like why British like Anglo-American liberalism won out, I think it has to do probably, and this is where Marx would probably be correct, is that it has to do with a form of economism and this sort of like virtualization of capital that took place at this time, because French liberalism and German like Ordo liberalism, they were sort of like a bit too parochial for like this totalization of a liberal world order to take place. Now, some people think it was conspiratorial that the British like basically took their child America and helped destroy these other great empires, and then they in turn was destroyed by the hand of liberalism itself. But I think like to examine why British liberalism became like the model, the Scottish Enlightenment liberalism, and not like French. Yeah.
In the comments, somebody says the British Empire did not win in 1918. America did, but not Britain. That's true. That's definitely true. But one of the things that did also happen is that there was a massive flight of British elite into American families, and
That's
we
true. Yeah.
we sort of like mind meld. And Prude and I actually talked a little bit about this in that open door notes. It was the stuff that Prude was trying to rein me in on. He was like, "Get back on track," and I'm like, and I'm trying to talk about the Battle of Manila Bay and the German fleet being there watching the whole thing. But yeah, no, this is definitely true. The British cannot be considered the winners of World War One. But English liberalism in the Landian sense that I'm using it, capitalism is an ethnicity. That's probably, there are some fine distinctions, and we'll probably talk about these fine distinctions a little bit in the middle, because one of the real ingredients of wokeism that people never touch, except for me, is this group that formed this psychological think tank called the Tavistock Institute, and their American counterpart was a guy in America named Kurt Lewin. And the differences between the Tavistock Institute and the way Kurt Lewin went about conducting his field theory experiments, that has a lot to do with what the difference between sort of like wokeism is and regular sort of technocratic therapeutic state stuff. The other thing I would like to point out with World War One is that and this is a really unsung point. Wait, go ahead.
Sorry. No, just one quick point. Like, I think the therapeutic state stuff, that probably is a huge part of wokeism that gets overlooked. But yeah, go ahead about World War One. Sorry.
Yeah, the other thing is, this is an aspect that it's in medical literature and it's in a lot of contemporary literature, but we don't really talk about it all that much. And that's the discovery of this condition called shell shock. It's called shell shock in World War One. In World War II, it's going to be called combat fatigue, and then it's going to be called post-traumatic stress disorder after the Vietnam era. And then very tellingly, since Desert Storm, an interpretation of this term that has really begun, it's started to call itself PTSI, which is post-traumatic stress injury. Okay, and this is an important thing for the rise of like wokeism in the therapeutic state. And what essentially happens in World War One is that for the first time, especially military doctors and this fledgling science of psychiatry, psychology, Freudian analysis, some Jungian analysis.
Jung was forced to be a field psychiatrist at one time.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So all of these guys, and Bion in particular, I focus on Bion because I think he's the most important. He's in the Royal Tank Corps, and the Royal Tank Corps is one of these, like, because you're in a tin can, and so you are exposed at a higher rate to both combat deaths and to these shell shock victims. And the interesting thing with the shell shock victims is Bion would have encountered a number of shell shock victims that had no other visible injury on their bodies. They just got, like, the tank they were in gets hit by a machine gun fire or artillery shell at exactly the right angle, and like the shock wave and the noise just causes them to totally dissociate. And I don't know, have either of y'all ever watched videos of shell shock victims in World War One?
I watched the film they showed.
Yeah, I mean, it's terrifying when you look at it. But one of the things that this, and as far as I know, there had never been a situation like this in the past where so many people who were were produced in such a short time by industrial methods that were just totally dissociated. Like they're not actually in the person is not inside the body, but the body can continue to function in this very strange way. And in interwar psychology, this was a really riveting concept for these guys. All of these guys that are like this is the treatment of shell shock is probably the single most important medical event in this entire mid-century paradigm of psychiatry. And so one of and if you ever read Bion's work, his famous work is called In Groups, and we're reading it with a book club right now, and I'm going through it for the second time, and it fascinates me over and over and over how many times he brings up this concept of this dissociative state. And he's always very concerned with, like, this idea, and he'll say, for instance, he'll say that the reason society hasn't sought therapeutic help for its psychological problems is it's not yet psychologically distressed enough to admit that it has a problem. And then there's a hard pause, and then he extrapolates that a little bit and says, this might have some consequences for society at large. Okay, and then there's this other aspect. So again, we're in World War II now, and as a result of the defeat of all of these other liberalisms, Anglo-liberalism in the English-speaking world goes into a serious economic decline directly after World War I. They lag behind the fascist states and the communist states in their recovery from the global recession, and the people who are advocates for Anglo-liberalism, they're kind of looking around and they realize that they're running an ideological system that is essentially a 19th century ideological system. Like, look, so we're really 18th century. So, British liberalism kind of comes into existence out of the Whig and Tory wars, like, Pitt the Younger. This stuff is 200 years old, like this idea that we can't do deficit spending, that, we have to have the gold in the bank to spend the gold. These ideas, these are 2 centuries old ideas now. And in the countries that they defeated their other competitive liberalisms, what grows up in their place are these very newfangled totalizing ideologies. You could say communism is an ideology from the 19th century as well, but by the time it pings through Lenin and starts down the Stalin path, it has been fully updated. This is a fully contemporary modern ideological system, and they are, they're kind of leaving the English speaking world in the dust. And one of the things that they're able to do that you aren't able to do as the governor of an English speaking liberal state is essentially rule by fiat. You can't just, you can't, like, Austrian painter can wake up in the morning and set the price of the Deutschmark. The British don't really have that ability because they have to do things like they have to build consensuses around things, even the idea of going to war. Everything in a liberal system has to be orchestrated to look like it's become the consensus, because it is, in fact, it's a very fragile political system.
It's very much like the propensity of order. It's like the suggestion of it. It's leading from behind. That was that one book by Francois Julian about it. It's very, like, in a way, like the orchestration of it. I remember writing this. I was going to write this for M1776 about conspiracy theories, about how, like, liberal modernity is like the only time where you could have, like, genuine conspiracy theory proliferate because of the nature of power having to being, like, sort of having to conceal itself, and the revealing happens over, like, a slow, denatured process over time, rather than most societies operating off of, like, consensus or off of, like, authoritarian rule. Like, a lot, like, the conspiracy theorists, they say, well, there's always been secret societies, and yes, that's true, but these secret societies were known as being like a sort of externalization of hierarchy and a sort of ritualism, whereas, like, nowadays, secret societies in some ways are a part of the same orchestration of power in a different way. But that's another point. But yeah, go on, Chris. And then I want to get Prud in. Prud doesn't,
Yeah. Prud's
He's been pretty silent this stream. He's watching Fish Tank. Prud's watching Fish Tank. He saw that Tim Hyde came on.
No.
No, I'm kidding.
I did find Pat Casey's tweet, though, on this issue. He had said that cultural Marxism and liberal democracy contrasted with bourgeois liberalism melded together into what we call wokeness.
Yeah. Well, but that's what Gottfried said, though. That's like there was a jump off point between bourgeois liberalism, which largely was very parochial towards, like, European and the North American civilization, and then now we have, like, sort of this internationalist liberalism, which is quite different. Well,
what we're doing is we're looking for the locus of the disjunction here. So, like, what exactly is the disagreement between Gottfried and apparently the rest of the right wing?
Right.
And So I mean, there's nothing that Gottfried says is wrong here.
I wanted to go to the cultural Marxism thing eventually, but yeah, go ahead, Chris.
Right, yeah. There's nothing he says is totally wrong here, but the thing that I've never seen anybody nail down exactly is what is actually the nature. Like a lot of times, and like people in the chat are doing this, and they're saying, "Well, this is the the Marxist reformulation of we take Gramsci, and now all of a sudden, instead of a proletariat revolution, we place the white Christian male in the locus of the bourgeoisie, and the revolution is now against them." It's not actually that simple. The Marxism is not actually that that apparent. So again, back to 1945 or so, in fact, really 1939 or so. We have this British state that's gearing up to go to war. They've just orchestrated a small coup against their Nazi sympathetic king. The British government in 1939 is weaker than it ever has been before. It is less able to build consensus than it ever has been before, and it has, the two largest armies in the world on its doorstep, threatening war of some kind with one another, or both with the United Kingdoms. And they decide they have to do something about this, and so they really set about this idea. So very quickly, what they decide they need to do is they need to beef up their governing ideology somehow. And if we can't do this with open authoritarianism, we can't build the ideological scaffolding with the trunk of the tree inside the thing. Okay, it has to.
Well, they did eventually, though. You could argue they did eventually. But...
Right. Initially, because to get people on board with this, they have to come up with this system that mimics these sort of fascist or communist systems. They need a way to get a lot of people moving in one direction without what Carl Schmitt would call the discussion. He pejoratively talks about the Anglosphere as being governed by discussion instead of by politics. So we have to come up with a way to kind of spoof politics in this system to get consensus for war, among the British people. And one of the things that they decide to do is empower this group of psychiatrists called the Tavistock. They've got this place called the Tavistock Clinic. And Tavistock's a very nice part of England. I mean, these are upper class people. They would have been very close proximity to government ministers anyway. So it's not such a coup that they managed to get funding. But Tavistock, the thing they're most famous for is the foundation of this field called group dynamics, and this is exactly where the Marxism enters. Okay, so these people are Marxist in the sense that they conceive of psychology or psychiatry, psychoanalysis, rather than being a relationship between a therapist and an individual. They see as the unit of analysis in psychiatry is going to be, first of all, the individual's relationship to a group, and
it's Gestalt psychology, really. That's what it is.
Right, yeah. Exactly, and groups' relationships with other groups. So these are the two things that they're,
which is the same rhetoric that woke tards use nowadays about social psychology that they learn in university courses. Like Intro 101 about, I want to see how the social impact affects the psychology of trans people, blah, blah, blah. Like that's the same rhetoric nowadays, right? Is being sort of popularized through TikTok, and before that with Tumblr. It's become kitchified in a way. But yeah, sorry, go ahead, Chris. Go ahead.
No, that's exactly right, because eventually we're thundering down the path to, that's essentially what wokeism is. It's you can even go look at, group relations, journals or whatever, they've got, Tavistock still has one. It's called Human Relations. If you look at what they're talking about, it eerily mirrors, internet discourse. Like these people, like these Tavistock people, they're still around and they're monitoring the way internet discourse works, because they're very interested in, if like Twitter in particular looks almost like it was designed by the Tavistock Institute. I was blown away. I've been reading these people for over a year now, and when the Twitter algorithm was published the other day, I had a jaw-dropping moment, because it punishes, did you all see that? Like the modifiers for your tweet boost? If you go out of network, the only thing that the only thing the Twitter algorithm punishes more than going out of network is misspelling a word, which I was like, based. But
I did that for OPSEC for years, but yeah.
Right, yeah, like there's reasons to do it, but Twitter, it presents itself as this totally open space where you can go talk to anybody or anything like that. Of course, we know we have shadow bans, and now as a result of this, we know that in this giant open space, we are in fact divided up into smaller networks by algorithm and probability. We've been assorted into different groups that are punished for interacting with one another, or that we're deboosted for interacting with one another. And I'm like, well, why is that? And you have there are all sorts of arguments you could put forth. Well, we don't want the Nazis to make the communists feel unsafe, so on and so forth. And this is
Austrian Patriot fans. I just try to avoid that on stream, but yeah.
It's foundational group dynamics, and where Marx actually enters the equation, he actually enters the equation a couple of times. The first place and the most important place he enters the equation is this idea that all of society is, they look at Marx and they say class relations, class struggle. Yeah, that's definitely the engine of history, but that's a little outdated. These groups can move around. Okay, so this bourgeoisie class, it's not monochromatic in its own right. It has, if you were to slice open bourgeoisie, a lot of smaller bourgeoisies would come out, and they all exist. And if you were to slice that one open, even smaller ones come out. So these groups are all in fundamental relationship with one another, and the ideal boundaries between them are actually very difficult to determine until you get to a point where you can start, using algorithmic functions to actually, quantify and separate them. So in the early days, they didn't have the ability to deboost your tweets or anything like that. They had to be a little bit more, mechanistic about it, or a little more tactile and mechanical about it. But the way Marx enters into wokeness initially is through these psychiatrists, and it's Marx's idea that the individual are relatively unimportant. The individual as a group, as a unit of analysis, is kind of bunk. That's garbage old liberal shit. It's all about class relation. That's the first place Marx really, it really enters into the equation. I'll pause and let y'all respond. I want to hear from Prude.
Yeah, Prude, you were arguing with someone in the chat about America and Britain.
Yes, I was arguing with an Australian, and I think this was in reference to the open door discussion that Sandbatch and I had a few weeks ago. But anyways, no, to stay on topic, I think
what's this open door discussion?
The open door policy from like the turn of the century, which you can tune in on my channel to see that. But anyways,
please be sure to like and subscribe.
Yes, by all means. But anyways, no, to stay on topic, because I'm not going to let chat bother me today. The point in his essay that or this little piece that he had written, I thought was really important. And it's like the last four paragraphs, but especially the first two here after he quotes at some point in the last 20 years. But he says, in the seventh chapter of Conservatism, a Rediscovery, Hazony highlights the replacement of post-World War II liberalism by woke collectivism. Such a changing of the guard is seen in the abandonment of the principle of open discussion and even disagreement in favor of group cohesion. We also find self-identified liberals expressing horror at the closing of open discussion by others on the left. This closed-mindedness has caused those who cling to a liberal identity to protest woke cohesiveness and call to a return to free society. Harzoni's observations is accurate, but may require a qualification. The liberalism that the woke left canceled was greatly weakened. Was a greatly weakened form of liberal persuasion, the exponents of which had already ceased to argue very convincingly for open discussion. For decades, that attenuated liberalism excluded the right, except for a moderate centrist version, which would not upset leftist gatekeepers. The parameters of allowable discussion on many issues had become more and more restricted before a late modern form of liberalism gave up the ghost entirely. I love that use of old English phrase of gave up the ghost. No one uses that anymore, except in a few Bible translations. By then, universities had already begun ideologically controlled, while both government media had prepared its way for this post-liberal age. This is literally straight out of After Liberalism in 1999. Like, this is nothing new.
If you write the book, you may as well just copy paste it yourself.
Yeah, right. You might as well make it easier for yourself because no one else has read your fucking work anyway, which is really depressing, especially
literally the only reason I have a blog is to save my effort post.
But so the point that I think that maybe gets lost in the weeds where they're saying, yes, it is Marxism, or it's not liberalism, it's Marxism, is this, and I'm going to throw in Ryszard Legutko's book, The Demon in Democracy, because he's this Polish resistance guy. He's an MEP for Poland, or he was. I don't know if he is anymore. He wrote this book in like 2012. And his argument was like the reason why so many Marxists and communists and people of like the, ancien USSR regime didn't face any justice, or, didn't face the wall. And in fact, they found themselves working in social democratic parties is because, the goal of what we would consider a liberal society is not too far off from what, the Marxist-Leninist interpretation was the goal of society either. And you combine that perfectly in a point in time where liberalism has sort of shut off the dialectic, and they've shut off where people can discuss things, then it makes it incredibly easy to have
wokeism's authoritarian liberalism, really.
Well, yeah, because there's no discussion. But I mean, that liberalism was already set up for the way that there was. I mean, post-World War II liberalism ensured that certain discussions were never going to be had again.
Oh, yeah, even about World War II itself.
Well, yeah, right, because we had won. We had we had deprogrammed a country essentially by and again
destroyed their history and their past and their
Legutko talks about this, and I know Dr. Gottfried has in a few other places, but I mean, where did all of these like great psychology guys get their start? It came in trying to deprogram post-World War II Germany.
Even Young, by the way,
Young
grad school. They all went to they went to grad school.
Yeah,
the rest of us.
Exactly. Well, no, yeah. Well, yeah, me too.
So the observation isn't that, the last 20 years of very ideal in discussion. I mean, I would say it's really the last 60 or 70 years of discussion. I mean, it's funny that we talk about 420 because also Enoch Powell gave Rivers of Blood speech this year.
Apparently Trudeau Sr. was also elected in
1968. Yeah. Thanks to Hudson for pointing that out because I don't know anything
so
about
many
Canadian
things
politics.
happened today.
But
the most important day in the history of the world.
There's a future Austrian painter that was probably born in this day.
Now that's wild. A future Austrian painter.
He's probably browsing. He's probably watching Fish Tank right now.
Yeah.
No, but
probably writing about his struggle on stream. Who knows? So I think that so much of this debate over this article, which had caused a lot of shit, was just that what I think that Pat Casey's take was correct, that wokeism is this nice meld between bourgeois, liberalism of the American Anglo format, melding its way to, make a monetized form of rebelling against the system.
But also, like, it's a post-civilization ideology. It's a post-humanist ideology in the sense of it.
It's post-national.
It's post-national, yeah, in the sense of it coming from a largely like European, North American consciousness, but also in negation of that North American European consciousness.
Yeah.
So
now that's where the Frankfurt School comes in.
But here I don't really buy it though. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to like Thultide and all those people. I don't buy it because I don't think the Frankfurt School was nearly as influential as like Rousseau and other people.
Again, it's one of these things. It's there, but it's not.
I'm more
there.
Gottfried there. Again, I'm like a theory cell like Gottfried. I am almost kind of like I'm not a new left person. Well, maybe.
I'll say it. I mean, I am. I like Theodore Adorno. Negative dialectics, one of my favorite theory cell books.
Yeah, man.
Okay,
aesthetic theory, bro.
There's my priors totally out in the open. Grateful Dead intensifies in the background now, but But there is a connection with the Frankfurt School. It's just not the connection that people want to make out of it. Gottfried knows this because Gottfried studied.
Like there is some validity to the Frankfurt. I don't mean to like. There is some validity, but yeah, go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, well, real quick, let me go back because I made a comment about the difference between Kurt Lewin, the American method of doing this sort of thing, and the British method.
Yeah, go. You were gonna get into that. Yeah, I'm curious about that.
Let me texture that real quick. So the Tavistock method formally, and the way the Tavistock method formally starts out with this idea that the individual himself is a giant injury. Okay, he's a bundle of essentially brain injuries. Okay. And the only way he can find meaning in himself, the only way he can find any meaning in the world is through participation in groups. But since no one seeks psychological treatment, no one seeks to remedy their psychological ills until it's too late, we kind of have to do things. We have to come up with ways to force them into this intermediate group that are referred to as basic assumption groups. Okay. And in the early experiments, I wrote a blog post about this, the Northfield experiment. Wilfrid Bion, he was running a military training wing during the war. And he was able to do this by taking these shell-shock patients and forcing them to join activity groups, and this is very interesting. He's got this rule where all of the inmates, all the test subjects, all the patients, they have to join one activity group. It could be chess, it could be calisthenics. And if there's not one that exists that they want, they can join their own, they can form their own. And now they're the quote leader of that group. And he's very interested in the people who choose to become leaders, and that's going to become one of his basic assumption groups is, these people that either want to be or they congeal around these unitary individuals and mark them as their leader. Okay. But the basic assumption group is the second stage in this 3-stage process. The ultimate goal is to work your way out into what is referred to as the working group, which is the set of groups. We were talking about how you can slice these groups open and find smaller groups inside and smaller groups inside. The idealized boundary of our system is this group of people who are bound by the fact that they are attempting to accomplish some task. And this is irrespective of whether or not they know what the task they're attempting to complete is. We're all the third cog does not ask why the fourth cog turns. It only knows there is a goal. So he's able to force these groups, essentially through this very regimented military environment. And the working group in this sense is you achieve a level, like the goal of the working group in this sense is you achieve a level of military efficiency that deems you capable to return to your unit and, kick some more Nazi ass. That's, it's a pretty simple schema. But after the war, when Bion continues to do this research, he runs into this problem again where we don't necessarily have a militarized society now. You can't rule by fiat the same way you could in the middle of the war. Okay.
Yeah.
So you have to come up with these other little tricks to kind of convince people that they're actually interested, so you have to kind of trick people. And the Tavistock method is very insistent on this point, that anyone who wants to engage in this process has to come to it voluntarily. Like all of his test subject groups, these are just people that live
psychoanalysis as well.
Yeah, it's exactly what it is. And he re-emphasizes this over and over and over again. And to this day, you can go back. Whenever I wrote this article, I had a guy somewhere in Australia. He was attending a leadership conference, and it was based on the work of Wilfrid Bion. He was telling me, he was like, I didn't think I'd ever see somebody write about this, but that's exactly what happened. They stressed over and over voluntary participation. And you'll see some of that in those diversity and inclusion in the workplace, that sort of thing. You'll see voluntary aspects.
Social media as well. That's like the whole model.
Yeah, exactly. You'll see voluntary aspects of this creep in. But Kurt Lewin is an American, and Kurt Lewin, he's the chairman of the Tavistock Clinic before the war in 1932 and 1933. But he's got what's called he's sort of tangential, and he works alongside Tavistock, but there are some differences. And he is considerably less concerned about the voluntary aspect of this. So he's considerably more okay with running massive psyops in perpetuity on the population to get them to assort themselves into,
the OSS at the time was doing this, not to go all camp off, but it's not to go like a wideness out, but it's true.
Jolly West. Say it. Just say it. Jolly West.
Jolly West. Yeah, exactly. No, but they were running these social experimentations in prisons. The one in Philadelphia was a house of horrors for different psychological and even physical experimentation.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's the main difference. That's the main difference between these groups. So the group in America that is most known for this is at Stanford University. Also still exists.
Yeah.
It's the Center for the Advanced Study of Behavior.
By the way, it's funny. Who's the guy that did the prison experiment? What's his name? Zavago? Not Dr. Zavago.
Yeah. Just
Zimbardo. He's like a woke tard. He's like a male feminist now. Like, so I wonder why.
Right. Yeah. It's like all these
brain.
All these things start clicking into place a little bit. But okay, so in America, these groups are considered. This has a lot more. This has some valence with the fandom thing. So this is really actually is. This is kind of the early formation of fandoms.
We're gonna get you and Default Friend in the same room together.
Right. We've actually done this before. She was vaguely interested, but I don't think she ever followed up on it. And this is she'll tell you that fan studies begins in like 1991, 1992, something like that.
Yeah.
And really, there's a much deeper history that it doesn't refer to itself as fan studies or anything like that. And people will also try to blend these two in together, and they'll try to say fandom is an ideology, and of like fandom is ideology is fandom. These are distinct things. And like one
why
of them
am I a Maple Leafs fan? Tonight they're playing the Tampa Bay again, and they're gonna hopefully they don't bomb again. It's like,
right.
Why do I keep taking punishment as a Maple Leafs fan? It's like, why?
The frame people will generally use is ideology is fandom, but if you flip it around and say fandom is ideology, then it's a little bit, you get a little bit closer to the truth. Because if you remember what I said, wokeism is the capitalist reification of dissent against capitalism. Okay, so in this sense, ideological fandoms are depoliticized fandoms. So think BreadTube, think like communists on the internet with their their Misfits t-shirts and this sort of thing. They spend $300 on a Mosin Nagant rifle. They get a Misfits t-shirt, grow white dreadlocks, and they go join that North Carolina professor and
they take HRT.
Shoot watermelons in the woods or something like that, and they it's all the workers' revolution or some. She's like, you're an adjunct.
I wonder, does HRT affect your aim though? I wonder.
I don't know about that. But anyway.
Density.
Frankfurt School. Yeah, Frankfurt School. The way the Frankfurt School comes is Frankfurt School, they're mixed in with all of these people. They know all of these people is through this kind of web or network of researchers that are forming what is going to be really referred to as a formal paradigm. Kuhn is one of these people. These early cybernetics researchers.
Thomas Kuhn is connected to this as well?
Yeah, absolutely.
God.
Through these things like these Macy conferences that they have, where they take these intellectuals, these professors, these interesting people in communication studies and psychoanalysis and group studies and military business schools, management theory. They mix them all together, and there's early artificial intelligence researchers like my boy Marvin Minsky. He's another one of these. So we're really dealing with this kind of like thick cloud of theorists who are all considerably better networked with one another than it frequently initially seems. And the Frankfurt School are they're in this group. Okay, so the ideological, the negative dialectics. I hesitate to use ideology. The negative dialectics of this situation are not as influential in this system as people would generally like to think. The way and again, Gottfried might know. He probably knows this. He's a little young, I think, to have participated this early, but I know he studied under Herbert Marcuse. Okay, and the way the Frankfurt School is interesting here is that the Frankfurt School conducted, specifically Marcuse and Adorno, conducted a seminar at UCLA. It was a semester at UCLA, and another one of my mentors was in attendance for it. So this is the reason I know about it. It's a pretty obscure program. It was called the German semester, where essentially UCLA took talented college kids from all over the country that knew something about Germany. Because back we used to have in the United States, we used to have a lot more people who knew German than we do now. Thank you, Woodrow Wilson. Yeah. But so they bring all these people to speak German in together, and really all they do is they just hold like Institute for Social Research style seminars with Marcuse and Adorno. And they, it's kind of far out to think of these, these two old personally, in their personal dispositions, incredibly old world conservative Jewish dudes hanging out in Burbank, having these like fine dining seminars with these college kids. But they are, and what they're actually, the connection between Marcuse and the CIA is this exact same connection. What they're actually doing is talent scouting for the CIA, because they have, the CIA has discovered that this, this concept of negative dialectics this is the book Adorno's working on at the time, and this culture industry, this tendency in the Frankfurt School's thought to sort of evaporate meaningful frameworks for everything. They recognize the corrosive, incredibly destructive power that it has, and so they use this German semester to at the same time scout for talent that could potentially be thrown into East Germany behind the Iron Curtain and operate as CIA agents. But they also instill them with some of these thought processes that they believe ultimately will be paralyzing for international leftism. Like if we get these leftists, we get these communists navel gazing relentlessly, and they won't have time to do any kind of workers' revolution or anything like that. That's the connection with the Frankfurt School. It's about as much as it is. But then there's also this aspect that the Frankfurt School is the message of negative dialectics. The famous quote in Negative Dialectics is, what can oppose the decline of the West? And he's deliberately name calling Spengler here. Name calling Spengler. What can oppose the decline of the West is not a restored Western civilization, but it's like the silent utopia contained in the image of its decline. Theodore Adorno's whole point is that Western civilization, the dialectics have been complete. The dialectics are no longer in motion. Western civilization has come to its end stage, and this is what it got us. It got us Auschwitz. That's his underlying thesis. It's like, so this Western civilization thing, we're over it, and so it's
over. Yeah,
it's post-humanist, and it's very much post-civilizational. You'll see these people that they're into Donna Haraway and all that Ashley Colby woman, using that rhizomatic new age hippie shit.
She probably read the animality book by Haraway. That type
I read
stuff.
it. I read it.
Yeah, I had to read it for grad school. It was not. I much prefer cyborg feminism than that one. But
right, yeah. Donna Haraway cropped up on my radar when I was writing. This was the first academic article I ever wrote. Actually, I was trying to explain how red foxes appeared in South Carolina. And I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole right now.
Oh my god! Well, maybe we got to bring you on Content Minded. We could spurg about this stuff.
Yeah,
anyways, to get back to the article about cultural Marxism, how does this, I think, but then how does it come to nowadays where the left is being, I would say, utilized, instrumentalized, and empowered rather than the right wing? How did that switch jump off from we need to denudre the left, and now we have to radicalize them and make them more giga chatted, for lack of a better term, than ever before? Well, and actually the right wing becomes this amalgamation of spurgs on the internet or gladio nationalists that are going to go and pretend that
very much like the
left. Russians.
This is very much like, if you're familiar with leftist discourse in the 80s, which I would point out, this is when Curtis Yarvin is at Brown, and this is when Nick Land is at the University of Warwick. Okay,
right.
Leftism in the 80s disintegrates. Okay, as we look at it in the United States, these are the Reagan years. These are the Reagan and the Thatcher years. So this is
this is neoliberalism.
Leftists are still ass hurt about Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan. And it's because in the 80s, leftism suffered a sort of catabolic collapse of purpose. This coincides roughly with, there's two things that are interesting here. And you can go Google Ngram this, go Google Ngram the word corporate culture, which of course actually it's a Tavistock coinage. It asymptotically moves upward in 1981, same year Ronald Reagan is sort of elected. And around the same time, something called the cultural turn occurs in the humanities. And so this is the cultural turn in the humanities. Academic agent can probably spurg about this quite a bit. But the cultural turn is in literary studies, it's the turn away from new critical readings of literature into something called new historicism. In history, it's the move away from cliodynamics into which is hardcore spreadsheet econometric history, the kind of thing that Eugene Genovese and Paul Gottfried would both recognize as Marxism. Okay, there's as a result of this influx, and it's kind of weird. Post-structuralism and structuralism arrive in America around the same time, so it's easy to get them all tangled up with one another. But these post-structuralists, the post-structuralist wing of this movement is very inundated with Adorno, and also
that
with
1980 right there. That's a jump off. Holy crap!
Right? Yeah, exactly. Okay, and this is almost exactly the moment when all those red diaper babies, they wake up from their 10-year cocaine binge in the 1970s, and they decide they're going to get jobs doing things like professor of early childhood education.
The red diaper doper babies, as Michael Savage called them. Yeah, and then you have Horowitz, who wrote that book Radical Son, about being one of them. David Horowitz.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And this is the
what happened to him? What happened to Horowitz? What happened?
Oh shoot! There's so many Horowitzes though. I don't know.
Yeah, true.
I keep thinking they all blend together. But the influence of this Gramscian, these Gramscian and these Frankfurt School ideas ultimately evaporate any sort of political energies. Like in late 1970s, Maoism is there's Maoist street terrorism in the United States. The academies are all infected. The academies are infected with people who are literally
Haight Ashbury.
Standing Pol Pot, which is kind of based, but they're standing all of these Latin American revolutionaries. Leftism is actually dangerous. Okay,
it's becoming third worldist as well, with those standing of revolutionaries, and then what happened and it is a wideness cell take now about my CIA in my South America propping up fascism, blah blah blah. That's
I mean, the left sort of catabolically collapses at the exact moment when people like Nick Land and Curtis Yarvin are kind of coming of age.
The seeds of reaction are starting in the internet age before the
right, exactly. And so if you go back and you look at the early unqualified reservations, and I'm not casting shade at this, I've met Curtis Yarvin. He's a wonderful person. I enjoy his reading. I enjoy his writing. I enjoy his writing so much. People tell me that I've been influenced by him. But I don't know if that's true. But I'm not casting shade at any of these people. Whenever I say they are essentially in a lot of ways they're reskinning late 80s leftist concepts that were in a lot of ways they
Countercurrents did this as well. Countercurrents did this as well back in the day.
It causes a lot of navel gazing. So the thing with the right and why does the right seem so stunted right now and the left seems like it's constantly winning? The left has mostly what we refer to as the leftist, and this is Gottfried again. It's almost totally abandoned leftism. So it's got this skin of leftism. But anybody who's been in grad school in the last 10 years or so, there's no Marxist professors. The Marxist professors are the Gottfrieds of the world. Whenever you say a bad word,
they vote for the Democrats now.
Yeah, I got through college and grad school because a Marxist covered for me. He was I don't think you should be using those words, but the ideas you express are open and valid. So he would always go to bat for me whenever I would cross the line. The Marxists, really in line with the way Gottfried's talking about it, the Orthodox Marxists in the university systems, they they're mostly gone, and what's left is this kind of neoliberal synthesis.
Yes,
where everything is governed by this corporate Memphis aesthetic, this corporate culture.
But that's the basis of my book on neoliberal kitchen writing right now. It's good you brought.
Oh, is it really?
100%. Yeah.
Yeah, you're my favorite theory cell.
Thank you, my God. I can't wait for you to buy my book. It's gonna be a trip. I'm writing. I'm writing about furries and Bataille.
Oh my God, I love George Bataille. He's that's a guilty pleasure of mine. But anyway,
I want to get Prude on this because he hasn't. It's
perfectly fine. I'll let you two rant.
No, it's okay. I want to hear because I want to go back to what Antioch O'Reilly said about the economism of wokeism versus Marxism. Yeah, go ahead, Sandbatch. Then we'll Christopher Sandbatch.
I was just gonna say that. I mean, I think sort of what's happened is that the right is kind of caught in this kind of identity navel gazing. So people who are just terribly concerned about the lexicological genealogy. I saw somebody this morning use the phrase cultural liberalism. Okay, and I'm like,
yeah.
That's garden variety, like new, like 80s leftist, like absolute entropy of discussion. Like how long did you waste your time? How many heartbeats did you waste deciding that cultural liberalism is it's like that tech bro meme that's like, guys, I got an idea. We could do podcast IRL. There's
and
a word, there's a word that exists for this. It's called capitalism. That's what cultural liberalism is. Come on,
exactly. Cultural capitalism, someone said before. I remember
we're just about 10 years behind. We're gonna like catch our wheels. We're gonna spin in this ditch for a while. Then like Nick Land he did a thread on this yesterday, where he's talking about how like all of the illiberal gains in the history of the world have been rolled back. And Nick Land, he also says that capitalism is an ethnicity. The only rational path forward is to tweak capitalism for survival. That's what the left has embraced. That exact mantra.
Yeah.
That so we have to.
The accelerative engine of capital is like on their side now. Yeah.
Right, and so like we might come out of it. We might all die. We either come out of it or we all die. That's kind of my take. But that's the reason I think this is happening.
Exactly. But then what are the people that talk about like cultural Marxism and like I mean, people like James Lindsay, I think automatically should be discredited with the whole like postmodern Marxism crap. I mean, crack open some Frederick Jameson for God's sake. But yeah, Prude, go ahead, man. I mean, you've been waiting for a long time. Me and Sandbatch have been.
I don't have much to add, actually, in this.
Well, you wanted to talk, like, how about give me your take on, in this interwar period, like, why is it that, like, if it was true Marxism, would not the economics of it not make sense when it comes to, like, pure wokeism? Like, why is it that wokism and, like it's a creature of neoliberalism more than anything? And some people say that neoliberalism doesn't exist. That's not a thing. I know that's like the Martin and Bap take, but like I wonder. I mean, I think that neoliberalism is a thing.
I don't know that it exists as a standalone thing, but as a conversational heuristic, it's definitely because liberalism was on its way out in the 1970s. In both the United States and in the Anglosphere. I mean, in the Anglosphere more broadly. So you have the British pound collapses. You have the Harold Wilson years. Myths of the 20th Century has great podcasts about the labor strikes in Britain that bring down the second Harold Wilson government. In the United States, the 1970s are the decade that the Soviet Union briefly surpasses us in trade surplus. This is the decade of gas crises, of rapid unemployment, and this is like President Ford has to say, this is
gritty and realist. Yeah,
right. The ladies and gentlemen, the Bronx is burning, to quote Howard Cosell. So like liberalism looks like it's on its way out, and then this twin shot of Reagan and Thatcher,
and the Soviets also like shitting the bed.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah. And the Soviets, like, there are ways to frame glasnost and perestroika, like, new openness. There are ways to frame that in terms of it's almost kind of a liberal turn for them as well.
Yeah.
And they just don't survive it because like I think the chances, a great West Wing episode about this, the chances of an illiberal country surviving the transition into a liberal democracy are very small. Like this is a surgery that you perform as a last resort,
Yeah. Prue, do you have anything to add?
On what?
No, there's a lot there, but
this has been, no, I don't have anything to add.
What about your impressions of the article? We didn't get to
that. I mean, really, the article. I've read a lot of Dr. Gottfried, so to me, this felt like the first 3 chapters of After Liberalism, except updated for 2023 current era politics. And what always astounds me is that when we talk about Marxism, and this is not to insult fellow travelers or their work or whatever, but it's just, what does Gottfried spend the first chapter on After Liberalism discussing? He discusses the history of liberalism and the terminology of it, and how it has evolved from, say, the understanding of like Whiggish liberalism in the 1830s to, 1970s history of liberalism and what that means, or even, von Mises calling himself a liberal in some respects. And so, like, there's an evolution of the term and an evolution of how practical political liberalism, at least in the Anglo-American tradition, evolves. And no one bothers to stop for a second that perhaps that if this thing has evolved, right, if we were to take this from, I'm going to treat it like an organism, so we'll talk evolutionary biology for a second. If we're going to view it, this form of ideology or this praxeology of how to govern with a set of ideals, if it can evolve, I mean, would you not suspect that in a ecosystem of ideology, of political matters, that this isn't going to try and fight its way out for survival? And that people aren't going to opt under these sort of, again, in Sandbatch. And it's funny because like Sandbatch and I talk about this all the time, the DMs, all the stuff that he's been ranting and raving about, because I find him interesting and teach me your ways. But it's just that I'm not surprised that this is the conclusion that Gottfried has taken. One, because he's kind of been around for forever. Lord rest in his soul when that time comes. But like also because what has Marxism evolved into, other than what we're seeing now? And really what that evolution was is that it decided to, like early Homo sapiens, either outbreed or breed with its contemporary ideologies. Like we have a little bit of Homo neanderthalis inside of us. So, well, why doesn't modern contemporary quote unquote liberalism, or whatever we call wokeism today, right? Why can't that just be a way to have Marxism DNA inside of all of us and things like that? I mean, the same way that somebody like right-wing, quote-unquote, reactionaries or new leftists from the 1960s and 70s, like, I'm not surprised. Like, I'm genuinely, speaking of Haraway, I'm really surprised that neither Nick Land or Curtis Yarvin has referenced, like, the word, like, the Cthulhu scene at all. I'm very surprised by that. But, I'm reading that right now, actually. But
well, I think Haraway's copping Land here. Like she's definitely. This is one of the things about Nick Land that always fascinates me, because the guys that know him only through like the Dark Enlightenment and this sort of thing, they would think you would think he's just this old bald boomer that just rages into Twitter all day. Nick Land is probably one of the 9 or 10 most influential philosophers in the world currently. Like he was like his early work, the stuff that we don't ever read, is very heavily read by people like Donna Haraway, Donna Haraway, by the way, is the first woman to ever receive tenure as a feminist, as a professor of feminist theory.
That's
so,
right.
That's how far the other
Judith.
end of the spectrum. That's how far you are to the other end of the spectrum when you start talking about Donna Haraway.
Well, I think that this is sort of important to bring up, because you referenced Land, and I was actually going to bring him back up again, because I think when we take a look at, say, and we talked about this in Pat's chat, Gio, it's just like, well, really, what is Marxism other than, say, and I'll get so much shit for this, but I really don't care. But like, what Marxism really does emerge, though, as a reaction to 19th century Anglo capital liberalism in the midst of the Industrial Revolution, and the disaffectation of the failure of the failure and mixed success of 1848 revolutions inside of Europe.
Right. Yeah, and this is a thing that people who can't appreciate Marx, and I went so far as to say that people like frequently.
Oh boy. Some guy didn't appreciate Marx right there, but Steve, those super chats.
But no, I mean,
like, ask you, Prude, about like the French Revolution connection to Marxism that Thultide did on Twitter. Shout out to Thultide.
Give me 1 second, because I wanted to get this final point across.
Yeah, and if you could share screen if you wanted to.
I literally have my thoroughly noted copy of Fanged Numina in front of me. So I can't share that on screen, but I do have the.
Maybe we'll talk about Making It with Death one day. That's one of my favorite essays.
That is literally what I'm quoting.
Yeah, okay.
Is Making It with Death. The anti-Oedipus interpretation of fascism is no doubt crude, but also is of enormous power. The revolutionary/fascist disjunction is used to discriminate between broad tendencies of deterritorialization and reterritorialization, between dissolution and reinstitution of social order. Revolutionary desire allies itself with molecular death that repels the organism, facilitating the uninhibited productive flows, while fascist desire invents the molar death that is distributed by the signifier, rigidly segmented, in the production process according to the borders of transcendent identities. This is priestless and guiltless politics emerging from the writers between Spinoza and Reich, further developed by Klaus Thwaite, whose study of National Socialism in his 2-volume Male Fantasies, despite its theoretical naivete, is the fullest flowering of schizoanalytic anti-fascism. I quote this little section here, despite the fact that some of you this might not make sense. That's perfectly
well. He means
understandable.
molarity in the Deleuzian-Guattarian sense, molar construction of identity.
The kind of shit that you would see straight out of 1,000 Plateaus and
Oedipus. That's what exactly where it comes from.
Yeah, and so I find that kind of bit to be really important when we discuss this sort of Marxism shit, because where does this stuff evolve into? Where does this go from?
Yeah.
It devolves, well, I don't even say it devolves, it rather evolves from sort of the straight orthodox Marxist interpretation of material conditions, which is why if you read some bits about Marx, and this is something that Sandbatch has kind of like pointed out when he's sort of looking at the Dark Elves stuff with Curtis Yarvin, is that you read parts of the Communist Manifesto or Das Kapital, and you realize that there's a lot of like reactionary shit in here that comes out of the mouth of like right-wing posters all the time.
But even like the opposite, like what's fascinating about Making with Death is that, we'll discuss this one day, maybe another stream, because I wanted to go into
We should.
essay.
I would love to do that.
But it's like that fascism is in some ways like a deterritorialization of power that then molarizes after like a revolution of violence, more or less.
Well, yeah, but that's the thing is that those stuff have stayed. Like the evolutionary traits that allowed Marxism to survive has, propped itself up, I think, quite well with how power is structured today. It's coalesced between sort of this like postmodern reaction to sort of like the death of leftism. And now it's sort of combined with, as Sandbatch, I think, perfectly described it, which was the, capital reification of protesting against capitalism. Because you'll still see those
Banksy as an artist is like the perfect.
He's the perfect example of that. In the same way that you even get that bizarre expelled but reinstated Tennessee representative about it. Like he's clearly making money off of this. Like this, we can.
I read an article on Counter, and I read it. I'm citing this article, my intro chapter. It's from I have it right here. What is it? Is it like Talking Points Mag, or is it
Talking Points Memo?
No, it's Commentary Magazine about like the kid, the leaker, and this as opposed to this kid. That's sort of like reactionary, like it's sort of like liberal kitsch in the sense of like LARPing Martin Luther King, the type of theater kidism of it.
But that's the thing.
Referred to it as the new Pentagon Papers or something like that. Who's that Daniel? What's his name? The most awful person.
Texiera or whatever his.
No, the guy that linked the original. Its name starts with a P. His last name starts with P, I think. Daniel something, the guy that leaked the original Pentagon Papers. They're
Daniel
like,
Ellsberg. Right?
Daniel Ellsberg, yeah, it's an E, not a P. Ellsberg, yeah, okay, whatever. Again, but to quote Marx again, history occurs twice. The first time is tragedy, the second time is farce. And just to recapitulate what I said again, that wokeism is dissent against capitalism, reified by capitalism. This is because when Daniel Ellsberg fires these memos off, he does serious damage to the United States. Okay, there's no way there's no way around that. Shakes public confidence in the United States. This is a global strike for anti-Americanism. But in the year 2023, when we get the Neo-Pentagon Papers, it just kind of lands with a thud. And you get like a week of news cycles out.
Well, I think it's because it was orchestrated, but that's another point.
Yeah,
we can talk about.
Well.
Yeah, I think that it was like
we went on with war on the war.
How convenient, right, for this to leak on a Discord, and it contains everything that you would ever want by the regime, where a guy is like shouting slurs at it. And okay, even if we want to just take Occam's razor into consideration, is there a slight chance that this is entirely possible, considering people leak shit onto War Thunder, or that any right-wing group chat I'm in would probably have someone saying ridiculous shit? Is that likely? Yeah. But is it also really, really bloody convenient that this happens in an age where we know that certain mentally ill, impossible women troon shooters were in contact on Discord with former FBI agents and things like that? Yeah, because there's no way you get a hold of like a Bushmaster and plate armor for $4,000 plus.
Does that word not trip the algo? Like, I could hear it. I could hear solemn providence whirring up in the background.
Oh well, I mean,
Yeah, I would try to
didn't
avoid the
come down.
keyword. Yeah,
give
possible women.
Gio money in case that happens.
Just this is demonetized. Yeah.
But to get the point across is that on one hand it seems possible, but on the other hand, from everything from what happened in Las Vegas to recent other events with impossible people, it's entirely timed, and I think it's likely that we want to pass this new cybersecurity surveillance bill that is guys and are banning TikTok, but also has sweeping surveillance powers about dissent, anonymity, and using other social media like Discord, Twitter, etc. How convenient that we did this, and at the same time, right? Like the war isn't particularly going well. America's got a munitions problem, as does its allies, and you've got all sorts of shit also happening.
Well, like I said, I went on this with this week's episode of War Report. So, like, it is convenient and it's information. If you go to my Telegram, I ranted about this JJ McCollum video, which is so ridiculous about, like, here's radicalized, and if you're a real world, you'd be a good little liberal instead of listening to Tucker Carlson and people on YouTube. It's like, it's so ridiculous. But the one claim, like, first of all, McClellan doesn't actually go into like the actual documents, but the whole like notion that this is going to put American servicemen at risk. First of all, why are American servicemen there? Really? I wonder why. Second of all this information that's actually in the documents, people that have been listening to the Duran for 6 months now have probably known this. People that are in Telegram know this. Like, this is not new groundbreaking stuff. It's stuff that people have speculated on since like at least I would say the summer of 2022. So the whole notion that like this bombshell information is akin to the Pentagon Papers is like ridiculous in my opinion.
Well, like Sandbatch said, or like even Mark said, second time is farce. Like, this isn't going to stop the USG's position on
Ukraine. No way it won't. No, I mean it will.
And this is the thing, though.
Maybe. But
this is the other thing, though. It's just like, why does the Pentagon Papers have such a substantial impact on American foreign policy in Vietnam?
Right.
In part because it primarily breaks with the media orthodoxy at the time. Which, I mean, yes, the anti-war movement was gaining steam, but I feel like we talk about the Vietnam War with like such a progressive historiography that like we forget that most of the country was all for it, or at least like a 50% plus one at a certain point in time was. Well, and so you have at this point, right, like a way to like totally crack through and talk about, we're doing far more shit than what is being told to the American people, Cambodia, etc. Whereas this is like, well, anyone and their mother could have found this out, right? Like, because the New York Times, the Wall Street
Who's guiding those HIMARS missiles?
Yeah,
I wonder who.
And literally with Sandbatch's job, you could track the tracking, logistically speaking, on boats and find out where all this shit's going.
That never ceases to amaze me. That I can just like anybody can. By the way, it's not like some paid software. You can log on to like Vessel Tracker, and you can like just watch tanker ships. You watch like $30 million tanker ships just traveling through the streets of Molucca. It's like, oh yeah, what would would be awful if something it'd be awful if Evergreen had a tanker blow up in the middle of the Straits of Molucca, wouldn't it? That would really throw a wrench in the gears. It's like the targeting software is right there. It's open source.
Well, and it's funny because that's what the Wall Street Journal was using when they were calling. I don't know if this was deliberate or not, but someone was reporting saying like all these countries have sanctioned Russian oil, but we can track the vessels and illustrate how they're bypassing their own sanctions regime in order to keep getting Russian oil. And this happened like, I think it was like May of last year when the Wall Street Journal was reporting on this, like very early on in the war when the sanctions started rolling out. It's just very interesting to see. But like, to me, it just seems rather perfect to target, a bunch of white, overly online racists.
That have anime profile pictures.
With anime profile pictures.
Momocon is best girl.
To return this to the framework of wokeism, this is like a really controversial. I'm trying to decide if I should say this. Like, since I've done it, I have to. Do you remember the basic assumption group category that like the bit that I had? Well, one of the assumptions of the basic assumption group is, again, return to this therapeutic relationship, and that the basic assumption group is considered to be kind of an unstable mentality. These are generally going to be people that their names are, they're pairing, fight or flight, and dependency, I think are the 3 names. The fight or flight one's the most interesting. And one of the methods that's prescribed, because when someone moves into one of these basic assumption groups, one of the things you have to do is prevent them from backsliding into individual neuroses. Okay, so this is now one of the tasks of the working group is to prevent backsliding into what's referred to as individual neurosis. Okay, and as you know, the full working group, full members of the working group, you know, which would be symbolized in the therapeutic relationship by the therapist himself. As people emerge from basic assumption groups into the working group, they take on the role of the therapist or the custodian of the group. And one of the things they have to do is, you know, continue to prevent. They have to work to pull people out of the basic assumption group into the working group. They have to work to cajole the basic assumption groups into, you know, whether or not they want to continue, you know, serving the needs of the working group. And one of these things, this is the kind of thing that keeps me up at night, is because I do think about this sometimes that the E-right, in not so much now, but when it was a more congealed thing, it looked very much like one of these fight or flight basic assumption groups. That's like it, and the way it serves the working group is that anytime you need a boogeyman, you can go point at those white dudes, you know, point at those white dudes that are waving all of the hate symbols. Like, we got all of them. There's always one guy at those things that's got every hate symbol plastered on him somewhere. And that's the guy that ends up in the newspaper, of course. But, you know, we like to think of ourselves as, you know, pure dissenters in a lot of ways. But there is a very real regime use case for having a self-selected group of antis, you know.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, it's very much like it's ideological capture as well to the mainstream media, because like most people aren't gonna like actually question the assumption of like why a 21-year-old like National Guardsman has access to these documents or like whatever. It's very much like a dramatic show of like okay, people that watch CNN or people that are like boomer liberals, like they're never going to question, okay, why is it that America's there in blue yellow country? Why is this a national security concern? It doesn't. Is America directly affected by this? Why do we hate Russia so much again? It's like nobody questions these things. So when you plaster like, oh, this guy was like spreading racist memes on Discord and he had an anime avatar and he had funny symbols and he had like, you know, Hyperborean edits that he was sharing to other kids, then like even supposedly smart people can go, oh yeah, like, yeah, there you go. Like, it's like nobody, what's conveniently omitted is like what actually is in these documents. You know what I mean? Because nobody wants to like ask the question of like, why does this become a national, quote unquote, national security concern? You know what I mean? So I don't know. Maybe I'm just fat Nick posting right now, but yeah. What do you think of that take, Prude? What Sandbatch was saying.
Oh, I mean, this is conversations Sandbatch and I have had behind the scenes, and I mean, I've had similar questions about it. Because...
Did you see the e-girl that we ratioed last night? There you go. That's a perfect example. She was probably a glowy.
You didn't.
Yeah. She had the red scare shorts with a BAM book. You know, I mean, everyone's like glowy. Like it's, you know.
Y'all are gonna turn all of the e-girls into Radfem Light, is what you're gonna.
That's literally a default friend take from today. Sorry.
Oh no! I know. I know what I do.
Oh man.
Oh God, Lord have mercy.
That's literally a default friend tweet. Go ahead, Prue.
Well, I didn't know. I saw the woman with the book, and I didn't think anything of it because you see that shit all the time.
So there was that one
parse that out for me again. I see woman with book all time.
You saw the woman holding BAM all the time. What do you see is a bunch of like entryists all the time. Yeah. And it tends to be women that do this. This is why, and I got in trouble because I took the bait doing it with those god awful women from New York City with that weird impossible woman one in the Catholic Church. And I thought that seemed really just fucking really inappropriate. Like I have no words other than that before I start spouting obscenities, and I don't want to. But no, the point that I think Sandbatch is getting at here is one that always is in the back of my head when I do these things, or I notice how the ecosystem operates. This is that you do have various little groups that are under all sorts of leadership, many cults of personality, people that are built upon the credibility of others. You have credentials by credibility by who can recommend you.
Yeah.
And those aren't my words. Those are literally Santiago's from Newfoundland, because that's how we talked about it, is that we have to base things on who can recommend who by word of mouth on credibility. Are you a good poster? Are you a good tweeter or whatever? Like, are you someone that engages in drama and doxing and stuff like that? But I mean, it makes it really interesting.
No, not you, Kelp. You're best girl. You're best girl. Don't worry about it, Kelp.
Classic Gio. So so it does bother me though. Like in the back of my head, like this is a very easily mappable ecosystem. Like, consider what data and society did in 2017. It was terrible, right? Because all that it was really based upon was who made a YouTube appearance with who, right? Like, very easy to create and disseminate a network very poorly to do so. And I mean, like, Twitter's not very hard to do.
Well, I hate to bring this up.
Let me terrify you. Let me terrify you. So here's what, because I was stalking an e-girl the other day. And I won't say
which one. I know all of them.
No, she's not. she's just a Bay Area coder girl. She got a blog. I've mentioned her before. But
there's so many of them.
Right? Yeah, exactly. Like I was like, there's 39,000 tweets. I was like, oh, I can't do that. So I'm like, hey, Bing chat, go follow this link, read all of these person's tweets, and give me an in-depth personality profile. And it did it. And like then I did it. Then I had it do it to me, and it got my Myers-Briggs right. Okay, so I'm like, oh, this is kind of creepy. Okay, so yeah, you could like the data availability for like mapping this network. Anybody who doesn't have any large account that doesn't have their followers shielded, you can enter a query in Bing's like little chat GPT, interface, say, return these as a CSV or return these as a JSON, and it will go in, and essentially build you a spreadsheet that has everybody who follows everybody else. And then, then you just start manipulating it inside ChatGPT. So you want to see.
That's what Twitter literally did before Elon. They networked people. Yeah.
That's the whole.
That's what Travis Brown did. Yeah.
It's so easy to do net linkage maps and this sort of thing. That's what would 2017, 2018, whenever everybody was getting doxxed, and those pretty maps, those pretty network maps were coming out. Who's that woman Angela Nagel, was it her that did it?
Yeah. I was in a few of those actually. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was too. I was like, oh look, there I am. But
I was right underneath Owen Cyclops, Yeah.
But the thing that always amazed me is like, how come we don't ever do that? Like, I mean, I've done it for myself because I was interested in what does the publishing literary landscape look like in Southern fiction right now. So I just went and I did this Twitter linkage. I'm like, so who are the different publishers of literary fiction in the South, and who's following them? And it just bing, I've got a list of who the contemporary Southern literati are, and I was like, why don't we do more of this? That's serious, that's serious data gathering. But I think we'll see more of it in the next couple of years. That's another thing, because the left, you were talking about why does the left so far ahead of us? The left had more resources to they can pay more people to sit around, because 3 years ago you had to do all this data entry manually, and now you don't. So I hate to bring this up.
Go ahead. No, I hate to bring this up, but look what's happening right now. They're persecuting the people that went to Charlottesville right now, and they're dedicated tracker accounts that they have GitHub spreadsheets of the shoes that people wore in that time. You know what I mean? They don't tell me those people aren't being funded by something. It could even just be NGOs doing this type of anti-what work, but apparently now there's court cases going on. Yeah,
there's a lot of NGOs, but I've done a lot of research into especially when Stop the Steal shit was going down.
Right.
Who is funding all of these people on both sides? Who's funding all these people that just sit around and talk about this stuff all day? It'll be they'll go screen at somebody in Durango, Colorado, and they're talking about it, and I'm like, this guy has absolute tech bro physiognomy, and he knows what he's talking about. But where did he come from? Where does he go when this like bit is over. And so I went way down the rabbit hole. Like, how do these groups get funding? And I just was like, I tell you where Antifa gets their funding. It's a lot of private stuff. So they pop up 501c3s. The guy that that it's a joint, happy 420. It's a joint paper company called Raw Rolling Papers. That guy donated directly to an Antifa aligned group and then marked it off on his taxes. It was like $4 million.
Oh, I think I heard of this guy. Yeah.
I mean, you look into him and he fits the profile. So, I mean, yeah, that's where the funding comes from. It comes from these people, frankly, these people that have made way too much money, way too quickly in the last 10 years doing, stuff like stock scams, selling.
Look at Bankman-Fried. Like, look at that.
Yeah. People who effective altruists who want to take their ill-gotten weed fortune and do something positive with it, so they go fight fascism. That's where it comes from. Yeah. It's not any more conspiratorial than that. I mean, it is a conspiracy, but it's not, it's not.
I do think there's probably the fact that they're doing the job of the government for them. I think there probably is something there. I mean, I know even certain factions, right wing.
What is the ultimate public-private partnership then ensuring that you get your Gibbs and the government keeps people out that would threaten that? I mean,
yeah, true.
It's classic patronage under the guise if we're going to
contract. Yeah, I mean, we're under. In this advanced state of liberalism, what does the state actually do? As somebody who's worked in political consulting and has brought me in contact with a lot of lobbyists and a lot of consultants and a lot of actual politicians. Hold on.
Yeah, just
sorry, had a New Orleans moment there. But when you come into contact with the actual government, there's this question: what the hell do they do? They don't do anything except mark appropriations. Okay, so like almost every actual function of the U.S. government, except for vital stuff like need to, and even some need to know, like cybersecurity, government office cybersecurity is all shopped out to this company called CrowdStrike. Okay, so they're pretty private companies carrying out nearly every essential function. If you built a list of essential functions of the government, there's private companies doing nearly all of it at this point.
But that's the thing, though. I don't like the whole neoliberal dream that comes from even before Fukuyama. I mean, he really just ripped this off of Kojève. The universal state that sort of that liquefies nations and deterritorializes everything. This isn't some utopian fantasy. This is literally corporate piss world. You know what I mean? It's people that are decentralizing tasks into tech bro coders with too much times and too much stimming on their hands. This is not a good world to live in. It's not this fantasy utopianism of the oppressiveness of the state is going to lower and we're going to live in this one global citizenship. It's no, it's if anything, we live in a way more crappier version of where the nation state is left off from. It's the in-between moment is more oppressive than any utopian aspiration. Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
Which way I fly is hell, me, myself, and hell, to quote Milton Satan. There is a sense in which the people who are making money is, and a lot of times, this is what I did as a consultant mostly. I acted during the pandemic, I would take Nigerian scammers that wanted to offer telehealth services to the U.S. government. Okay, yeah. And that was what I would do. I would help navigate them through the process of GSA contract procurement. But this is a huge, it's an incredible business in the United States, and the people who are in on it are making incredible amounts of money. I was talking about this the other day when I said we live in the age of the tech bro, the tech startup. One of the things the tech startup culture has done is it's taken relatively dweeby dudes and given them incredible amounts of money overnight, and they do dweeby shit with the incredible amounts of money that they get over, and that's where why does the culture seem so dweeby now? That's the number one reason, because the people who are
they're run by theater kids.
The people who are making all of the excess wealth in the United States right now have bad taste in everything.
Yeah, no, 100%. Why do they buy into this humans of flat design catch? It's because we have a poverty of vision, and I understand you don't want to go back to some returnist fantasy. I think that's why also that could be the appeal of Trump, because he was sort of 80s kitsch machismo, golden tower. I was gonna say golden arches, but yeah, golden arches, of course, back when McDonald's was more aesthetic. But Trump embodied that sort of
his
Las
his
Vegas kitsch Roman appropriation.
Right, his pink tie with the double Windsor knot,
Exactly. Yeah. Like the White House design. But anyways, Prude, you're back. You took
long streams with one kidney are not all that friendly.
I wanted to ask you about I think was it who was it? Was it my good friend Orthodox Canonist or it must have been him. About the Orthodox view of Bolshevism and Marxism, how they view it as a sort of aberration upon the Russian spirit. There's a lot of work about the Orthodox view of Marxism, but
I'm not going to give you the most complete answer on that, and
yeah,
because I don't know it really all that well. I don't follow those two gentlemen very closely because some of the stuff I read from them, and then they'll share people be an expat in Russia, and I just get my eyebrow cocked real quickly, that just smells off. But I mean, if you were to look at the lives of martyrs and those that had lived through it, they'll tell you it's an aberration, considering that it's a rejection of what you would consider the baptism of the Slavs. From St. Cyril and Methodius onwards, really an aberration from 1,000 years of history. And then if you read, for instance, the monk Moyes' book, The Saint of the Prisons, which is really a really interesting look at Orthodoxy in Romania during the time of the Soviet Union. You take a look at the man of Valeru Gefenk, and his idea and claim really is that really the root cause of this, of course, is atheism. This is an aberration, of course, of the godly order which Holy Russia was established and then by chance overthrown, with a mixture of Wall Street and Germans in between trying to overthrow the Tsar. But they'll tell you that it's an aberration. But to me personally, I don't know it because I'm not from that area. That would be asking me, hey man, what do you think about the German instance of blood guiltiness in regards to the Second World? I'm not going to be able to tell you. I'm not German.
Yeah, but you summarized it though.
You know who has an interesting take, and this is and actually again, like I said, Dr. Livingston. He's he's Abbeville Institute. He's actually probably one of the world's leading authorities on David Hume. Kind of a personal mentor of mine in a way, and he's an Orthodox Christian. He's an Orthodox convert, and he's real tied in with Dr. Gottfried. And one of his criticisms of Dr. Gottfried is to get to return. When Gottfried is Marx wouldn't have cared about this transgender. Sorry, that was a close one.
I think you would say transgender on YouTube.
Yeah, exactly. That's the stable word. Yeah. But Marx wouldn't have cared about any of this, and I'm okay, this is another thing that's sort of interesting about.
But he would have.
Yeah, Marx.
But he would have.
Abolition of the family.
Yeah, Gottfried's generation is sort of hard K-lined into this kind of Cold War Soviet Union that there was a brief moment in time when it was a relatively stable bubble of social conservatism. Arguably, kind of, they're still doing insane shit bulldozing fruit orchards because a spreadsheet told them to. But if you go back in the early days, and I love early Soviet lore. I was hanging out with Charlemagne and Turnip and Thomas, a couple other buddy's lake house recently, and there's a copy of Gulag Archipelago there, and I had never read the Gulag Archipelago there before, and I sat down and read it, and I was like, this is a Marxist text. But but there's all kinds of stuff that goes on in the early Soviet, especially the early Soviet Union. There's one group that relentlessly fascinates me. They're called the Legion of the Militant Godless, if you translate this into English, and this is a literal. It's a state sponsored, but not, it's a state affiliated, but not state sponsored group. That sounds familiar, that they get their kicks by doxing Christians in the Soviet Union. Okay. And then, these people all get sent to the gulags and that sort, and that sort of thing. So there's no shortage of this just absolutely wackadoodle utopia. One of the first things the Bolsheviks do whenever they seize control of the government is they put God on trial and they execute him by firing artillery into the sky. So to make the claim that Marx wouldn't have cared about, Marx absolutely if Marx is around today, he absolutely has his pronouns in his, in his Twitter.
Oh yeah.
There's no doubt. So that's the
So
aspect
all
of the
those
Gottfried
trans
article.
communists, they're kind of right though.
Yeah, that's the aspect of the Gottfried article that I think rings a little hollow. This idea that that the Soviet Union was this bastion of social conservatism, even compared to now. No, it wasn't.
No, I think now you can make that case, but not like the 90s and the Soviet Union, like the 90s after the Soviet Union. No, during the Soviet Union, certainly not.
I mean, even Stalin's reaction by kicking out most of the original Congress Party members. I mean, just no.
But yet Stalin did secure, in terms of the ethnic base of Russia, he did secure.
Well, yeah, this is where you get Dr. Pohl's bio-Stalinism argument, where like he's basically like, well, we're going to take the core ethnic component of Russians, the Slavs, and we're going to just make sure we have a system in place to keep them on top. Rather than, and also at the same time,
because Russia was always being ruled by minorities before.
Well, yeah, but also at the same time to incur a sort of like ethnogenesis of like the new Soviet man style stuff, and then you start moving a lot of guys into Kazakhstan. Although that really changes after December '86, but that's a whole other. They did the whole Kazakhstan discussion's a whole other one too.
Yeah, they did a number in the Chechens as well at this time. But that's what I mean. Like nowadays, like. Your average like Marxoid that like LARPs on Twitter with like a John Brown avatar, they don't like. They're like, what do you mean that communism had an ethnic component to it? That's crazy talk. Like, no, it's true. I mean, nowadays, I don't know. I think like, I would agree that Russia is not a bastion of like trad orthodoxy, but never mind. I'm going to start vanity posting.
But I mean, this goes back to the principal complaint that a lot of people had with Gottfried's article was that Marxism and all of its iterations, from Marx himself, Engels, and his influences to today.
Well, this is the Tide talked about.
I mean, this is what he made here, which was the simple and blatant, obvious point that every bit of Marxist's iterations, which I think you can find quite clearly in critical theory today, still advocates for complete abolition of all hierarchical structures, in the name of this egalitarian pursuit.
Well, there also was in the Soviet Union, even there was sort of like an androgyne character to the workforce, that women could like be in the fields with men and other things of that nature. Like, I mean, I don't think you could take that and extrapolate that to the full on like excesses of like a certain impossible woman view of the reality that comes from Tavistock and elsewhere. But I mean, I think the seeds are definitely there.
Well, that's why my argument is like, if we were to take an ideology and treat it as an organism, which Land, Deleuze, Guattari, and others do, right?
Yes.
Like you're going to have to watch.
Spengler does before as well.
Yes, he does. So this all goes back to German idealism, kids. But I mean, it doesn't. But it does. But
it does in a way. But I mean, of course, Deleuze is very critical.
I'm being slightly
on Spengler real quick. Did either of you all hop into Spengler acolyte space the other day about?
Yeah. I was listening to my alt.
I wanted to hop into that one because it was on the most important chapter in Decline of the West, which is the meaning of numbers, and that's the one where this. No, that's
not. You know what the most important chapter is? The one where he's talking about impressionism. I'm sorry. That's the most important.
No,
I'm kidding. As an art cell, I have to. I'm going to ban Fishy Frenzy in the chat just for saying that. That's terrible. No, I'm kidding. I love Fishy Frenzy. He's a good friend of ours. But I can't abide by this take. Look at this. I can't abide by that take. Maybe go ahead, Sandbatch. You were talking about Spengler, and
no, that was it. It just hit my brain, and I felt like I needed to say it.
No, but I mean, T77 did a great job in that space. Look at Fishy Friends. He's freaking out right now. But anyways, final point before we get to stupid chats about Marxism. The one thing I think is like the postmodern angle of wokeism. I don't believe that they're true postmodernists, in my opinion. I think that Peterson and Lindsay, okay, I'll give you an example. Like, what you were talking about the Tavistock group and the sort of in France, there were like the physicalist psychiatry school, And Michel Foucault actually says, it's like, I'm with those guys. I'm with like the etymologists, like those people that are doing the medical research stuff that they shared from the British. And that seems oddly Foucauldian to say that the body is an amalgamation of legions that are healed over time by group identification. Of course, Foucault would say, like, this is how you measure power, is through like, and this is where like the obsession, the woke obsession with bodies comes from, is because they bastardized that very like Foucauldian analysis of like the legion of seeing the machinations of power on the body, right? So it's funny how you talk about it that way, but to say that like there is a case to be made that Foucault definitely inspired a lot of like the quote unquote, and again, I hate the word, the woke social theorists. But to say that like postmodernism as a whole is like equated with Marxism in the Frankfurt School, and like therefore that creates like modern wokeness, like that's like a jump. Like that, like you have to be like so incoherent. Like you basically have to be James Lindsay or Jordan Peterson to make that jump. It's like ridiculous to my mind.
It's
yeah.
like it's a reduction to reductio ad absurdum, to use the Latin, is what it is. You know, it's like it's like you've reduced the elements of what you're talking about, so you've degraded them so thoroughly that, you know, information bleed has rendered what you've said, you know, nonsensical.
But even to equate postmodernism with like relativism, like the way that it's understood in like North America, it's like that itself is a debate. That itself is like a huge assumption, you know, like it's just like theoretically, I mean, I know, like, I understand, like, on the ground, it doesn't matter because like left activists are going to like parrot the whole, like, not like thing about bodies irregardless. But I'm saying like the theoretical structure behind like quote unquote modern wokeness, like that's, I don't know. Yeah.
Well, this is in part because so much of today's dialectics, at least in politics, is homeopathic. I mean, like the left can shout about bodies and biopolitics all that they want, but all that they're taking is the tiniest, and dare I say, like a linguistic form of a basic assumption group into a tiny little pill, which is then filled with like sugar and warm fuzzies, but it still has that little nugget in there. And then they'll just reiterate whatever they need to, because most people haven't read this stuff.
Exactly right. That's exactly right. That's how intuitive this stuff is. You know,
most people don't read.
people don't read. People are retarded and all sorts of other stuff, and they take their little, take the red pill, take the blue pill, and it's like it's homeopathic sugar pills with like a little nugget of information inside, and then all of a sudden I'm magically enlightened on like the woman question or whatever question that you want to address. And it's just like, no, a lot of this stuff still takes, I think, to some degree, significant academic work. And if the two other gentlemen on here have graduate degrees, that should be an indication that maybe they've studied a little bit. And also, I agree with Sandbatch. Volume 1, Form and Actuality, the most important chapter in that book is on numbers.
No, the art analysis is the most important.
No, it's numbers.
Why is it so important though? Numbers.
Here, I will pull out the exact. Here we go. The style of any mathematic which comes into being then depends wholly on the culture in which it is rooted, the sort of mankind that it is that ponders it. The soul can bring its inherent possibilities to scientific development, can manage them practically, can attain the highest levels of treatment of them, but it is quite important to alter them. The idea of Euclidean geometry is actualized in the earliest forms of classical ornament, that is infinite.
He talks about post-Euclidean geometry being like the open plane of... Yeah,
and that of the infinitesimal calculus in the earliest forms of Gothic architecture, centuries before the first learned mathematicians of respective calculus were born. That paragraph kind of seals the deal for me, that chapter on that.
No, but see, you can relate... But then you relate that to the same way Spengler talks about impressionism, because in the sense that is non-Euclidean in that it is sort of opening up and like deterritorializing that space in the picture plane. And he's saying about Euclidean geometry, non-Euclidean geometry, following the same course of like Western civilization, being like...
Wait, go ahead. Real quick for people, you all know what non-Euclidean geometry is?
From my understanding, it's basically three-dimensional. It's like...
it's like sort of bent plane geometry. So like, you know how like whenever you have a triangle, theoretically, a triangle can only have the internal angles can only add up to 180 degrees. Well, in non-Euclidean geometry, you bend the triangle at, around an axis, and it creates a situation where all of those old rules don't work anymore, and you can have triangles that are like 360, maybe not 360, triangles that are internal angles add up to 185 degrees, sort of
Yeah,
thing.
you
That's
see this
what
stretched out
non-Euclidean
with a
geometry is.
triangle over a sphere, or like a flat plane that has been stretched out. And this is where you see non-Euclidean geometry be used a lot in, say, calculating the impact of a gravitational pull on, say, if we were to treat space-time, right, like a trampoline, that sort of stuff.
So in other words, it abstracts space to the point where you can have three-dimensionality.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah, that's the way I understand it. I mean, I'm like a math dyslexic, so don't take my word for it. But anything more about wokeness or the
it needs a new
leaks
name, for God's sake.
It needs a new name, yeah. Like, I mean, I think there's a bunch of stuff that I think we shouldn't talk about here when it comes to like recent history and like when the digital archipelago was away for a week. But by the grace of God, go I. But yeah. So, any final thoughts?
Was there really that much that happened last week?
Yeah, man. There was a lot of, not a lot, but like definitely like I don't know. Yes, you're going to Scaldings.
Yeah, the Scaldings event in Tennessee later this June.
Are you?
Which I think Sandbatch is going to, although he just left here real quick.
Yeah.
Oh.
Oh.
You can't be so twitchy, man.
Yeah.
No, that was me. That was me.
Oh.
I thought
Okay.
I had tried to re-enter him, but he came back on there.
Are you going?
Oh, I haven't bought a ticket yet, but I might go.
Okay.
Like I'm not a very good plan.
A little clearly. But I'll be there, and I've got some people that I plan to meet up with. It'll be a good time. Academic Agent will be there. So will Radlib, the Distributist, if you
All right, never mind. I'm going.
Wait, when is this?
This is a sort of conference-like thing that we started in the U.S.
But
last year.
When is it happening?
In June.
Maybe I could go because like apparently May 11th.
May 11th is the magical date when the certain gene-altering mystery fluid will drop from being required to enter the United States.
Yeah, I was going to say I suggested Gio as the keynote speaker actually, and there was questions about whether or not you could enter the country.
Whoa! I could be a keynote speaker.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Should be a thing to talk to them about. And see.
I could see my friend Bob. He's in Tennessee. We went to grad school together. He's a Heideggerian. One of the first conversations.
Not Bob's at Bob's Corner though, which is good.
No, my friend. He's on Twitter as Bob Smithers. One of the first conversations we ever had was about Ebola and Chris Chan. I'm not joking. And he made the mistake of asking me who is Chris Chan. And I'm like, okay, you got a few hours? He goes, yeah. So then the rest is history. Anyways, time for
the money.
Yeah. I pretty good this week. I got a few good ones. So let's go. I'm scrolling up. So any final thoughts on woke? I hate the term even. I hate using. I'm consciously like trying to find a term in my book to like not call it wokeism. And I'm like, what can I say? Global leftism is probably like a good description, but global liberalism is a term I've always used. So moving up, so Sandbatch, you got anything? I put your all his links are in the description. His Twitter and his Substack. So Twitter.
Yeah, I'm at like last time I checked, I'm at like 596. So 4 of y'all need to pay out.
Yeah. Nice. So Mewtwo. By the way, if you don't want, next week I might release the Content Minded with Dino World. We talk about Ray Pete. I have to release that one. And the week after, I got a good one with Scott Mannion. I got a good one with Josh Leketch, and I believe I have a really amazing one with Alexander Adams, but I got to start recording some of them. It's just that like, listen, if I'm inconsistent with the content minded, it's because I have to write my book by the end of July. Sorry, the beginning of July. So that's why I'll be spotty with doing them. I'll try to keep up with Art After Metaphysics because I have a big one planned for Gen Reviews. I want to go through all of the Red Book. And that's going to be like quite a task. And hopefully I'll have my Discord up by then to do like book readings and stuff. So first one for 420. Oh my God, 420 by Stephen Hines. Thank you so much. I believe that was a sticker. Thank you, Stephen, for 420. If you guys want to like give me a meme question, like if you want to do F Mary Redact, if you want to give some
God, that
420s
from the other week.
Yeah, from the other week. Let's do F Mary Redact for 420s. Let's do that one for 420s if you want to sneed those super chats. So the next one is from, I'm going down now. I'm scrolling. I'm trying to find it. My God, where is it? It's, yeah, please give us a 4. If you want a F Mary Redact, give us 420s. Okay.
Actually, if we're doing that, I'm putting this one on.
Yeah, there you go. That's probably a better one. I believe the next one's from Yiz. Yiz. I was gonna make a dirty joke.
You're better than that. You're better than that.
Yiz.
But I'm not. Do it.
No, because I did it one time on stream where I'm like, Yiz the Jizz Queen. Like, not gonna do that again.
There it is.
Oh, Yiz, our good friend Yiz the Eunuch for $10. Instead of wokeness/wokism, we should use anti-white, anti-whiteism. Words shaped through. We must force others into our frame. If you utilize their terminology, legitimize their ideology, discuss. That's a good point, but I think, like, okay, I know Yiz is gonna freak out on me in this one, but I think that largely it is anti-white, obviously, but I do think that the all-encompassing intersectional nature of it attacks other areas of society and traditional values that I think is it's not as inclusive. But all of those people hate white people anyways, so I guess maybe that's just redundant.
Well, I mean, this is one of the things that, like, you know, as a member of like what we've like self-identified as a fight or flight basic assumption group, you're going to key in on threats to your, you know, to the specific group that you belong to. So that's going to, this basic assumption group is actually characterized by that tendency to magnify this one issue that's perceived as a threat to them. When in fact there may be other threats moving in other directions as well. And I mean, I think this is all too all-encompassing maybe to reduce, to sort of that sort of politics.
Yeah, true. Prude, what do you think about that?
Very similarly along both of your lines. Like, I think that everyone in this space is already going to know that it's not rocket science, people. They just hate whites. Like, it's reiterated. It's been said on more than one occasion by mainstream conservative figures at this point that things are quote unquote anti-white or anti-white racism, which I don't like the latter term.
Yeah, I don't
anyway,
like.
But I mean, like, I think the fact of the matter is that it's out there. People know it, and the fact that that term is not going to be stopped. But I can't reduce wokeism to just it being plain old anti-white. If I wanted to, I could go like the full-on white Anglo-chauvinist route and simply say that like wokeism is anti-civilizational in America, and the only people that built this like country were that group, and just like go from there. Which, I mean, sure, but I think that on the grand scale of things, I look at the fact that America is exporting wokeness, and I realize that like, oh, like we're gonna like kill the world with this shit.
Wokeism is Spenglerian, like accelerative decline in a way of like Faustian man creates its own destruction. Yeah,
I think yes, it is. The whole system that we have here in America is blatantly against the founding stock of this country.
But then there is an importation of like third worldist ideology. That's what Thultide does. Like, that's why I think having Thultide around is pretty good, because he does keep you on your toes. That there is like an importation of like third worldist ideology into like
largely European that Cold War third worldism never ended, which it hasn't. But interruptions aside, I can't. It's anti-white, yes, but I don't think I can explicitly reduce it to just calling wokeness anti-whiteism, because there is a lot more to it than that.
I think Martin had a great take when he talks about like the 2010s, like alt-right, like trying to create like victimology, but for white people. That's never going to work. And like, really, you should be embracing more of like a heroism, or more of like, you know what I mean? Because like to just like be like I
less
think
woe is
Spencer tried to
me.
do this.
Yeah, less woe is me and more St. George.
Yeah, but like I know like even like Spencer tried to do this about like, you know, like trying to like import like the excesses of critical theory into like, what if we could talk about it but for white people, because we were going to become a minority anyways, so it's like, why don't we have the same idea as a minority group? It's like, that's not going to work. That's, I don't like, even people in South Africa don't like even AfriForum doesn't view it that way.
No,
as
they
like
don't.
A victim group, you know. Like, by the way, I saw Conjus Caracol in the chat. Did we congratulate him in getting engaged?
We did the other week.
Okay, yeah. I almost forgot
he
about
DM'd me and he was like, "Hey, I caught that last one." He says, "Thank you." So
yeah, he apparently the notes on YouTube is like controversial take. Did you see that one? He pointed that out on a Digital Archipelago. The last chapter is like controversial thought. It's labeled. Anyways, for $5, Ned Kettle. Is that a reference to Ned Kelly, the Australian anti-hero? There was a good article I read about the connection between the Tavistock Institute, the Grateful Dead, and fandoms. Never got to the point, though. Shame.
Part 2, though.
Yeah, part 2.
So somebody is shaming me for writing an article a year ago, and never. Well, you know, I'm going to see the Dead on May 6th, and I promise I will have it out by then.
How can you see the Grateful Dead in this day and age?
It's Dead and Company. It's those surviving members, and John Mayer is their lead guitar player.
What? Without Jerry Garcia?
Without Jerry Garcia, but he plays Jerry Garcia's guitar. You know,
yeah, but who cares? Cool. Who cares?
Yeah, I know. I know. I know. Yeah, we're gonna revolt against this. They took this from us. They took this from us, Gio.
That's like Leonard Skinner playing. Well, I shouldn't say that. Leonard Skinner result was pretty decent without, you know, the original crew. But $10 by actual physical kelp. Maybe I could take her for dinner one day. Take my money, Gio. Thank you so much for $10 by actual physical kelp. Please slide into my DMs. I'm very lonely. I'll treat you right. Yeah, all that good stuff, all that simping stuff. And $2 by J Ford. Haha, tanker ship go boo. Yeah, I know Sandbatch was fed posting a little bit there. He didn't mean actual. He meant like, what if it would be a shame if
the Lusitania.
Yeah, I was absolutely not endorsing, you know, bombing tanker ships. That's like really no irony there. Don't do that.
Wait, Sandbatch, you work in logistics? Is that your normie job?
Yeah.
Whoa! Shipyard legit? Like, what do you do?
I don't
What's
ever
your social
actually
security
go,
number?
I don't ever actually go into the shipyards, and I essentially just, you know, import export like George Costanza, you know.
You works for Vandalay Industries.
Yeah, I work for Art Vandalay.
And for $50 by Owen Zaleski, our good friend Owen. Thank you so much, my friend, for $50. Hello, all. Happy Easter. I'm working on a Substack for my writing, mostly short stories and poems, including a ballad about Billy the Kid's fighting Dracula with very unironically explicit Catholic themes and elements. Is this cringe or kitsch? God bless. Well, it couldn't be. I think it could be saved. I think that could probably be something I would. Billy the Kid, Catholicism,
I like the idea.
and Dracula?
I love the idea of Billy the Kid shooting Dracula with, you know.
Isn't there an anime about a priest that hunts vampires?
I would not know.
I think there is.
Our anime heads in chat can tell us.
Yeah. And for $5 by J Ford, once again, thank you, J Ford. Trad woman aesthetics is such cool. Yes, it is cool. No authenticity. Anyways, you guys got any ideas about Patreon networks? I think we discussed a little bit about Patreon networks.
I mean,
that was a fascinating mixture of sentiments.
Yeah, I know.
To point out.
That
you
is
can say a lot for $5, Sandbatch.
like text to speech on Fish Tank.
No, but it is. I find it to be cold because all that it is like we're gonna commodify like the lonely desires of overly online men, and then we would laugh in the face of those that would actually want that shit anyway.
There's
Hey,
some
look, I
people
mean,
that
I'm
actually
okay
do
with it. I'm 100% okay. I'm okay with Radfem Light. I'm okay with Trad.
Yeah.
I'm as long as they're. I'm not interested in the clothes they wear. If that makes sense.
Yeah,
I'm interested in when they take it off. No, sorry.
Which we can always appreciate. Yeah, I mean, I'm not. No one should be Murdoch here and give a shit about wheat fields and things like that. Like, it's a nice aesthetic that has been terribly turned into cringe.
Yeah.
So yeah, no. As for patronage networks, we've talked about it a little bit before, and I know that Sandbatch and I have privately. But like, basically, at the end of the day, inside this space, the patronage network is me, Gio, and everyone else that does this stuff are all clawing for middle income white people's like disposable income to give to us. It's primarily oriented towards millennials and Zoomers ages 18 to 35 is the primary.
Some Gen Xers.
And some Gen Xers. I've got plenty
that have
of those
money.
that have money that send some cash. And
that's why I publish on Substack now, because of the
same.
Gen Xers that have money.
Yeah, for the Gen Xers with cash. But so the problem therein, right, is that if any, like with the recession that is most likely to come, and also inflation, there's nowhere on earth, right, where that patronage network is going to be sizable enough to fund everybody.
Yeah.
And so like at any, like, so say a recession happens or another bank run or anything, like the grift for a lot of people is going to dry up very quickly, and you're going to determine who's actually in this for their beliefs or that they like what they're doing, or if they're just in this for a quick and easy buck, because it's easy to say I don't like those wokesters from time to time. So really the problem is that how does ordinary people like you, myself, or anyone else try and get around that? And I think that this is going to be the need for, say, physical media. The book Revenge of Analog, I think, indicates that there's money to be made in like actual print stuff and books and things like that. I mean, it's very niche, but it's there. Same with newsletters and things like that. And then secondly, I think that it would require you to take your talent that you have and start looking to generate a network or to generate a product or a artifact or an artwork or whatever that would potentially draw you interest from people that aren't our normal audience. Not to say that we don't love you, but obviously, like the rest of us, you have a job and a life and things like that to live, and gas is getting more expensive again. Sheesh. So yeah, I just think that patronage is going to be something that is make or break for like the quote unquote e-right this year.
Well, that's what I mean.
You know,
that's
I think
why
that new founding group. I really hope they do well, because it's probably the best. I mean, that's the way the left works. It's the way the left works.
Yeah.
They just have they've recruiting firms. You go they're the left's version like of new founding is called LinkedIn. You can go on there and you could hit the filter, get rid of all the white dudes, get rid of and all you've got the pool of people you're trying to patronize.
Yeah, and New Founding's great. I went to their offices in Dallas a while back to interview Santiago. Santiago is, I don't mean to get them in trouble, but Santiago is like the only non-WASP person working in their office. It felt like a country club. Like, I'm white as can be, and I felt like, oh shit, I don't belong here.
Yeah.
So
Irish in you.
There definitely are people in that respect, and I do hope that they succeed.
I mean, Irish is non-WASP. I don't mean that Irish aren't white people. Irish are definitely white people. Are they white people?
Yeah.
Are they Irish?
We don't have enough super chats to talk about that.
Yeah.
All right.
We can address the IQ somewhere else.
If you wanna play F Mary Redact, give me 420s. And also Jay Ford for 420. No meme question. You should not entertain them. Well, I know Jay Ford, but they are hilarious. I do like playing F Mary Redact, and also I'm desperate for the super chats. 550 by Halcyon. Am I pronouncing Halcyon by Orbital, one of the best songs ever created. Halcyon, thank you for 550. What should I read as my first big boy philosophy Go and read Plato's Republic, in my opinion. Start for the absolute basic. That's basically every every question in Western philosophy up until, I would say, the 20th century can be found, at least in its nascent acorn stages, in Plato's Republic. I think you have to start from the bottom to go work your way up. What do you guys think?
So I would say Beyond Good and Evil.
That could be a good one, but for introduction, though, maybe.
Yeah. It's like that's the in medias res approach. I understand it's controversial, but yeah, that's the one I would be like, yeah, Beyond Good and Evil, right there.
You have to lift a few plates before you could read Beyond Good and Evil, though, I feel.
Yeah, my idea of a zero shot is probably not the same as other people's idea of a zero shot.
Yeah. What about you, Prude? First philosophy book.
First philosophy. Oh,
serious one. It could be a religious scholar. It could be like a saint.
No, well, no. If you're
Confessions.
Oh no, I wouldn't start with Confessions. I mean, that's a hefty book. No, I would not tell anyone to start with Confessions. That's like early Christian autism that I think that you might want to. I would recommend that you start with Plato. That would be my recommendation. Wholeheartedly, it would start with the Republic.
I had to translate all of Confessions my senior year in undergrad. Yeah, that was my Latin capstone. Was translating Confessions. That was
my god, that's crazy. I could imagine doing that. Holy crap. I guess if you were good at Latin, you could do it though. Were you good at Latin, Chris?
At the time, I was. Yeah, I mean, but it's like one of these things where like it's difficult to focus on the Latin because this like dark psychedelic 600-page text is unfolding very slowly, word by word, in front of you. You know, induces mental breakdowns.
I mean, really, you could start anywhere. I mean, a lot of people would say the Republic. I think that the Statesman and the Laws is also pretty decent, as is Symposium. Plato's always a good start if you wanted to get a look at Western philosophy very early on.
Yeah, I think like the Phaedo, but then again, the Republic is pretty all-encompassing though when it comes to the Platonic corpus. But anyways, moving on. Don't do that. Reading you loud and clear for $2. Oh man, sorry, Jay Ford. Do we have any more here? Oh yeah. For $5 by Fishy Frenzy, our resident Amarnite, just saw the absolute gem Cosmopolis. Do you guys like David Cronenberg? Yes, I love David Cronenberg. Have you seen Eastern Promises and History of Violence? Both were good. I think I've seen both of them. I remember more Eastern Promises than History of Violence, but I do like both Viggo Mortensen, and Ed Harris. So what do you guys think of those two? Do you like Cronenberg? I love Videodrome, bro. That's like my favorite.
I've seen Scanners, Crash, The Fly.
Existence?
I have not. I've not seen Eastern Promises though, so I can't comment. But I like him.
You'd like Eastern Promises. It's really good. It's about the Soviet. It's about like the Russian mafia, and it's really great. Sandbatch, you like Cronenberg?
I don't know who he is. I don't watch movies. In fact, I watch so few movies that
really?
A woman friend of mine who works in like Ashley Colby style regenerative agriculture and like has no contact with the world told me that I need to watch more movies. Like I think it's been 2 years since I watched a full movie.
I'm more of a cinephile myself.
I mean, it's not that I'm not, but again, I took so many. I don't know how you, because I'm sure you had to take a lot of cinema courses as well. At this point, like I'm no fun to watch movies with because the technical aspects of filmmaking are what interest me. I'm like, so how did he get this shot? You know, and so like nobody wants to watch movies with me because I'm like when we do you do the upward tilted shot into somebody's face. It's like Kubrick's trademark. I'm like, yeah, freeze that, and then I talk about it for 20 minutes, and everybody's bored, So like, I don't see many movies.
You should read Bresson's essays on filmmaking. You should do that. It's like
that's going to be for the rest of 2023, I'm going to force myself back into movies. I didn't read fiction for years either, and in the last 6 months or so, I've gotten way back into fiction.
Really? I'm not a big fiction reader. I'm almost done with House of Leaves, but I have to. Yeah, I'm not. My old man's more of a fiction reader. So for a super sticker for $149 by J Ford, let's YouTube Studios. Let's go to that super sticker. Let me go. It's I can't tell what it is. So earnings, super. Where's supers? There you go. Oh, it's a gem. Oh, it's a gem. Thank you so much, Jay Ford. Really great supers. It's a gemmy. This whole stream is a gemmy. So there you go. Final thoughts, final shilling, guys. Come on, guys. Give me one F Mary Redact in the super chats. I will do. So I know
there has been any trend for how this meme plays out in this show.
Yeah.
I want to point out that I've been keeping an eye occasionally on the comment sections, and I was surprised to see that some of my regular hecklers were not there. But then I just flipped over, and there's Jake with South Carolina avatar calling me boring again. He is in every time I said
you had bad takes that were like tons and tons of bad takes one after the other. It's impressive, he said.
I mean, I do have some bad takes, and this because I'm in a lot of ways I can be your designated bad take guy because I literally don't care about my reputation at all. So I will post a poll so you don't have to.
I try to avoid them because then you could get griped on Twitter, so it's not gonna like the whole Catholic thing recently. You guys been following that? Like Catholic, like literal, like Dominican priests, like posting cringe about.
No.
Did you see that?
Is this in respects to what's happening in El Salvador?
No. I think one of them was that, but also it was just about like race and Catholicism and.
Oh, are you telling me that like the Marxoid liberation theology stayed in South America and it's still having a prominent impact on racial and economic relations today? Say it ain't so. We haven't left 1970. Jeez.
Oh my God. It's funny. Classic Theist had the best response to this one guy. And the guy like screen cap Classic Theist. It's like, man, I just don't, I don't like the day, like when I see priests on Twitter posting like Wojak memes, I'm like, what's going on here? This isn't good. This isn't good. Anyways, for 420 by Fishy Frenzy, of course, he had. I'm even scared to put this up. You forgot to observe the bit we did in the beginning, Fishy Frenzy. You weren't here. We talked about how April 20th is a historic date for so many different reasons. Without any bias, we're not making any statement either or for YouTube purposes. So yeah. But there you go. This has been a great stream, guys. So no F Mary Redact. Come on, guys. Come on. I'm begging you. Did you see the Twitter chart?
Are you this?
Do you want me to? You want me to make one up for you? You're not gonna like it.
No. I'm curious now. I'm curious.
No, I'm not good. I'm not doing it.
Chart that Default made, but then like people were like, "Why isn't Default in this one?" It was like,
I looked at that and I was like, something's missing. Where's the cream filling?
Yeah. It's but then someone made a Twitter poster like a guy one, and like literally every single e-girl wanted to redact Zero HP Lovecraft. So oh my God, for $2 by Owen Zaleski, F Mary Redact Gem Cole Sneed. Like memes? I don't know, guys. What do you guys? Okay, Mary Sneed because it's eternal. I guess do Cole because it's the hot new thing. No, actually, no. Marry Gem. Got to marry the Gem. Have relations with Sneed, and I guess because Cole is getting Cole. Ironically enough, the Cole meme is getting Cole itself. So I guess redact Cole. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I'm in accord.
This shit with a response. Sorry. Dumb.
Oh,
And the
this
one
is the
that
next
J4 just sent is even worse. So,
for $20, F Mary redact the current panel, but gender bent.
like, this is an indication, Gio, that this is you need help.
Okay, listen. You gotta answer this one. This is $20. I would marry Prude. I can't say.
Do it.
Okay, because Prude would look good as a woman. I'd marry Prude.
Oh,
I'd
Jesus H.
I'd probably have a good time with Sandbatch as a woman, and I'd probably have to sunset myself. What do you guys think?
This is a suicide pact. We all have to off ourselves.
Yeah, that's the only
Yeah.
answer to this.
The only answer.
On the count of
I don't
three,
know,
we
I
all
think-
pull the trigger.
I think Prude would look good as a woman. I don't know.
I think Prude would look good as a woman, but I think Gio would bear better children.
Maybe.
Prude's kind of skinny.
Yeah, true.
You know?
True. Look, he's not. He like just muted and Prude's like. I love how we put him through punishment every single stream.
You know, earlier today, someone in chat had popped off saying every episode of the Digital Archipelago is a humiliation ritual, and I said no, it isn't. And there are days where I think he's right. No, there he is in chat. Remember when you said this isn't a humiliation ritual? You're absolutely right.
We have another sticker from $4.99 from Nito Tomato. Thank you very much, my friend. And it is a keep it up. It just says keep it up. And it's a little cartoony character. So, oh my God. We have another one by J Ford. Is J Ford? What's the one by J Ford? Yeah, he sent that. Yeah, there you go. Sorry, J Ford. So thank you, Nito Tomato. Man, I did pretty good this week. Holy crap.
Yeah, Winston Wolfe, I agree.
What did Winston he got the withered Wojak. Oh, that's so brutal. That's so brutal. We every episode Prude is put through punishment. So oh my God. But thank you guys. This has been a great theory cell-ish type of episode. I think, listen, not to make enemies, but I think this stream was on par, if not a little better, than AA stream on the Gottfried article. I don't know. What do you guys think? It was pretty good though, the AA stream on it.
I hadn't listened to it.
I saw a little bit. It was pretty good.
I can't help you there. I haven't seen
right.
it.
I was actually literally said earlier, I was like, I'm leaning on Gio and Prude to have watched, at least one of them to have watched that. But it didn't come up. There was no reason. We didn't need to talk about it.
Well, we had our own.
We did it.
Takes.
We did it. We were pretty self-contained, I would think.
Yeah. Oh my God, 4.99 by Cody Browning. No amount of these chats will buy back your dignity. Oh no!
That shouldn't stop. Just because there's a goalie doesn't mean you don't shoot.
That's true. Hopefully the Maple Leafs will learn that one tonight. God, I was so disappointed. The officiating was terrible. Michael Bunting getting that suspension just for elbowing a guy. Like, come on. I mean, it was payback though, because the same player, sticked him the period before. But anyways, enough about that. Thank you all. Do you guys have any last minute shilling? Next week going to be Dino World on Content Minded, and hopefully on Digital Archipelago is going to be on Prude's channel. We have a great stuff to cover. Gio didn't have dignity when the stream started. Everyone sent $1 with the amazing atheist. that was classic. See, way before Stefan Molyneux did that, the amazing atheist had a stream with Fake Sagan, where Fake Sagan was like waving a Glock around, and he was like chastising a guy for only sending $1. So we're gonna get a bunch of $1 super chats. Anyways, Do you guys got anything to show, Prude? What do you got up this Saturday?
I will actually be out of town this Saturday, so I will hopefully have a video out either tomorrow or Monday. There'll be a Substack out tomorrow as well. Next weekend, we'll be covering the concept of the Davidson window on prudent observations with regards to the issue of Taiwan. And for those who are supporters via channel membership, Substack, or Subscribestar, there will be Patron Book Club this coming Saturday on the 29th at 12 p.m. Eastern. We will be covering the considerations on France essays from Volume 1 of Major Works by Joseph de Maistre, courtesy of Imperium Press. So if you want to have a readily accessible book club where every month we cover a new batch of books and things like that, by all means. There's a new Real Talk out, which is more of a nature story. It pairs rather well with Morgoth's latest rant as well. And then if you want spice, go to my Odyssey, where Dimes and I talk about Murray Friedman's 1995 book, What Went Wrong, the Creation and the Collapse of the Black-Jewish Alliance. And that's part 1 of probably 3. So we'll be back covering that book soon. So yeah, plenty of good stuff coming down the pipeline and plenty of stuff already out. Your continued viewership and support is always appreciated. The Digital Archipelago is funded by viewers like you. Take care.
Oh, yeah. And Sandbatch, you got any writings coming up?
I want to see 600 followers by the end of the day, and this is a suggestion, but it will become a threat if it needs to. And I will, I'll have some Substacks for everybody soon. They're not going to seem like they're going to come in a series that don't seem like they make sense, but if taken all together, I'm really circling the drain on a new theory of history that I was forced to concoct. So hopefully they'll have this moment where they all start to come together and congeal into something readable. So if y'all are following me on Substack, bear with me while I get my nonsense out.
Yeah, hopefully. Don't take threats and bayou monkeys. Oh man. Anyways, thank you so much, guys. Like I said, if I'm spotty on the content minded and the book reviews, it's because I'm writing my book, and the past few months, just bear with me. So by the summer, hopefully I'll have nonstop content. But anyways, thank you all. God bless. Goodbye. Too sweet.
See you, gents.